Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the move of What If Deku Lived Next Door to Chaos? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The ＤISCLAIMER. Izuku Midoriya. Social work major. 21 years old. Bisexual. Works at the floral shop. Usually register and works on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Ochako Uraraka. Nursing major. 21 years old. Pansexual, has a 2-year-long crush on Tsuyu Ajui. Works at the floral shop. Usually work on centerpieces and works every day of the week. Tenya Ida. Business major and a student athlete. 21 years old. Bisexual. Works at the floral shop, usually in the back or DIY and walks on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Shudo Todoroki. Tells his father he's a business major but is actually studying agriculture. 20 years old. Works at the floral shop, usually work in the back or register and work on Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Tsuyu Ajui. Marine biology major. 20 years old. Lesbian, has a 2-year-long crush on Ochako Uraraka. Works at the local YMCA as a lifeguard, work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Hitoshi Shinso. Art major. 21 years old. Bisexual, has a secret boyfriend his friends are unaware of. Does art commissions for food money and his share of the rent. Katsuki Bakugu. Culinary major. 21 years old. Dating Ejiro Kirishima for 3 years. Drummer for his band, works part-time at a restaurant. Ejiro Kirishima. Civil engineering major and student athlete. 21 years old. Dating Katsuki Bakugu for 3 years. Bassist for his band, works part-time as a fitness instructor. Denki Kaminari. English major. 21 years old. Bisexual, has a secret boyfriend his friends are unaware of. Guitarist for his band, works part-time at a grocery store. Antasiro. Management major. 21 years old. Pansexual. Manager of his band, works weeknights at a local bar. Mina Ishido. Dance major. 21 years old. Lesbian. Pianist of her band, works weekdays at a 50s-inspired diner. Kyokujiro. Music composition and theory major. 21 years old. Lesbian, has a crush on her classmate. Lead singer of her band, works weekends at the same bar as Hanta. Sons of Beaches. A bunch of Sons of Beaches. Hanta thought as he flipped through the thick stack of paper in his arms. Hanta and his friends had been living in their apartment for about 3 months, and they already had enough complaints to allow a call from the cops. Thankfully, or unfortunately, the landlord was so lazy and cheap that she never bothered calling the police on any of her tenants, even the ones that were drag dealers and did their business behind the building. It was kind of his fault, Hanta had to admit. He was so adamant about moving into a cheap apartment complex, so he really had himself to blame for the shady activity he and his friends had to deal with. What was not his fault, however, was the endless wave of noise complaints that sat in his hands. Hanta knew his friends weren't the quietest, but he had dealt with them his entire high school life. The group talked about living together frequently, but it didn't become a reality until their second year of college freshman year. None of them had stable jobs and most of them were swamped with the new area that was college. Once they all had jobs or money to help pay rent, they went apartment hunting and ended up deciding on this crummy but cheap complex they currently call home. Water worked fine, but if the shower lasted for more than 20 minutes, only 3 people would be getting a hot shower, and the power cut out a lot, especially in the mornings, but the neighbors were nice enough and it was close to the train. Hanta was mostly concerned about annoying neighbors, however, 1 month in and he had to realize his friends were the annoying neighbors. After a successful cultural festival, Hanta's friends decided they wanted to form a band, and that's exactly what they did. They were mostly doing it for fun during their first year of high school, but midway through their second year, they started performing places and were making money. Third year, Hanta convinced his friends to post their music in different places. By the time the group were college freshmen, their music could be found on pretty much every music platform. When the group moved into their apartment, Hanta assumed the music wouldn't be an issue, and seeing as he was gone pretty much every day of the week due to school and work, he kept that hope. Of course, he was wrong. Besides the occasional note to properly dispose of garbage, mostly every complaint was a noise complaint, and every complaint was about the same: yelling in the early stages of the morning, examples such as, "Die, germs," or "out of my FNG way," or loud rock music at night. These complaints went on from about the first week FO the group moving into the complex to roughly 2 days ago. The mere sight of the stack of papers made Hanta's eye twitch. Sighing as he entered the rickety elevator, Hanta tucked the stack of papers underneath his arms, loosened the black tie around his neck, and pulled out his phone. After deleting a couple of Twitter notifications and responding to a text from his mom, Hanta opened up the group chat affectionately named, "Ho's Mad?" Hanta. "My friends, my lovely and wonderful and perfect and amazing friends. What the F is wrong with you all? Pikachu. Hello, my lovely and wonderful and perfect and amazing friend. Whatever do you mean?" Hanta adjusted his phone before taking a picture of the stack of papers sideways so the group chat could see the thickness of the stack. Hanta. One attachment image. All of these are noise complaints. All of them? Please explain. AG bro. All of them? Like, all of them? Or are you exaggerating? Hanta. Some of them are about the trash. But that's like one of every 20. Girl in purple. How many complaints are there? We've only been around for like 3 months. Hanta. Like 40. Now explain. Pinky Minaj. It's obviously Katsuki. He wakes up every morning and screams. Rat King. Oh, the Freckun eyes. You're the one who demands on waking up to Roman holiday every morning. On full blast. Pikachu. That's actually me. Mina wakes up to super bass. Hanta. It's ifing all of you. You wake up too early and scream. You play video games that I've already made clear you shouldn't be playing. And you practice late at night. I'm buying noise-canceling wall foam right now. It'll be here in 2 days and installed in 3. Stay quiet until then. Please. AG bro. We will, bro. I promise. Sighing, Hanta turned off his phone and looked up. Staring at him was a guy with unkempt purple hair and pale skin. He was wearing black earbuds, but his dark eyes stared directly at Hanta. He shifted awkwardly once he realized this was one of his neighbors, no doubt one who had filed a complaint. The purple-haired guy looked at the stack of papers underneath Hanta's arm and scoffed. With a flip of his middle finger, he walked off of the elevator 2 floors early. The doors closed and Hanta, alone, screamed in frustration. When Shoto finally graduated from high school, second in his class with a 4.0 GPA on his belt, the idea of moving into an apartment with his best friends in the world didn't sound horrible. He'd be surrounded by the people that understood him the most, he wouldn't have to worry about being stuck with a roommate he hated, and he had multiple people to stay awake with at 3 a.m. when insomnia kicked in. Even the first year, when they barely had food in the kitchen and slept on a large air mattress or the crummy couch they found at a suspicious garage sale, it wasn't as bad as Shoto expected. The second year is when shit hit the fan. More people started moving into the complex, meaning more suspicious people. The sounds of their above neighbors arguing then. Have makeup SEC had become normal, what hadn't was the death threats from down the hall. Or the daily drag deals right below their window that showed an appealing view of Japan's version of Target. But it was tolerable. Then their neighbors moved in. Shoto and his friends had moved into the apartment one away from the one against the end of the hallway, which had been occupied by a relatively normal couple. When that couple got married, they moved out of the apartment, leaving it up for whoever got first dibs. It kept empty for a while until new people moved in August, 1 month before the first semester of the sophomore year started. Instantly, there was a problem. Freshman year, Shoto finally truly experienced what his friends called stress. During high school, Shoto soared through classes without any challenge. They were too easy even, but the second he sat down for his first class, he realized what he was in for. No, he wasn't a business major like Tenya or a social work major like Izuku, which were, from what Shoto has seen, are very difficult majors to get through, but that didn't mean he was having a walk through the park. It was already a surprise to pretty much everyone but Izuku that Shoto wanted to be an agriculture major, He wanted a simple job without too much pressure. He had enough of that placed on him by his father. Shoto managed to keep his 4.0 GP, even had all A's, but it was a hassle. So, imagine Shoto's reaction when every morning since the day his neighbors moved in, there would be screaming, or the constant sounds of video games, or the loud music, albeit good, at the late hours of the night. He wasn't the only one suffering. Ochako, who worked every day of the week, would be woken up hours before her alarm went off after a long shift the day before. Hitoshi, who already didn't sleep for days on end, would lose sleep because of the music that went on till close to midnight, or the screaming that started as early as 5 a.m. Izuku and Tenya were constantly startled by the sounds of gunshots coming from the video games, especially considering they both have parents who work in law. All of that for 3 months built up into endless anger, stress, and boiling annoyance for their neighbors. Shoto was in the break room, scrolling through his phone with a bored expression. It was Friday, meaning he, Tenya, and Ochako were on shift while everyone else was either back at the apartment or staying at the university for a club or something. Seeing as Shoto came in earlier than Tenya and Ochako, his break was before theirs. Shoto had taken off his green apron, exposing the white polo shirt and black breathes that were his uniform. The apron was tossed on the chair at his side, where his feet were propped up because Shoto hated sitting in chairs like a normal person. Finished with Instagram, Shoto exited the app and spotted a couple of unanswered texts. Thankfully, these texts were part of the group chat fondly titled, "My Friends." Hitoshi Purple Heart. They're quiet. I don't like it when they're quiet. Sue Green Heart. Would you rather them be screaming? Or blasting music? Hitoshi Purple Heart. Don't put words into my mouth. I just find it suspicious when they're quiet. It's not right. When are y'all getting home anyway? Ochako Revolving Hearts. Shoto gets off in 2 hours. Tenya and I are off in 3. What's Izuku doing? Sue Greenheart. Izuku is with some classmates for a project. I'm just getting some groceries for later. Shoto. Thanks, Sue. How long have they been quiet? Hitoshi Purple Heart. They shut up around 8 p.m. yesterday. Haven't made a peep since. Not even that loud guy who screams every morning. Izuku Whiteheart. Sorry if I worried any of you. And that's strange. They're always so loud. Ochako Revolving Hearts. Exactly. It's so strange. Tenya Blueheart. Ochako. You should be working. Not texting. Shoto. You're texting too, Tenya. Tenya Blueheart. Only to catch Ochako's attention. Besides, my break is coming up soon. That is strange about our neighbors. Those hooligans are always so rambunctious. Hitoshi Purple Heart. Yeah, that's true. I'm enjoying it while it lasts. I finished 5 commissions. But it won't last. I say that the next time it happens, we do something about it. Shoto was quick to type out for anyone could ask a question or take the idea from him. Shoto. I volunteer. Izuku Whiteheart. That's a good idea. You're good at confrontation. Ochako Revolving Hearts. It's because he's a cold beach. Tenya Blueheart. Please get back to work, Ochako. Snorting softly, Shoto turned his phone off and grabbed his apron. Fixing it up a bit and checking for soil, Shoto tucked his phone away before leaving the break room. He needed something to distract him from the tiredness of waking up at 5 a.m. for 9 days in a row. When Shoto finally graduated from high school, second in his class with a 4.0 GPA on his belt, the idea of moving into an apartment with his best friends in the world didn't sound horrible. He'd be surrounded by the people that understood him the most, he wouldn't have to worry about being stuck with a roommate he hated, and he had multiple people to stay awake with at 3 a.m. when insomnia kicked in. Even the first year, when they barely had food in the kitchen and slept on a large air mattress or the crummy couch they found at a suspicious garage sale, it wasn't as bad as Shoto expected. The second year is when shit hit the fan. More people started moving into the complex, meaning more suspicious people. The sounds of their above neighbors arguing then have make-up SEC had become normal. What hadn't was the death threats from down the hall. Or the daily drag deals right below their window that showed an appealing view of Japan's version of Target. But it was tolerable. Then their neighbors moved in. Shoto and his friends had moved into the apartment one away from the one against the end of the hallway, which had been occupied by a relatively normal couple. When that couple got married, They moved out of the apartment, leaving it up for whoever got first dibs. It kept empty for a while until new people moved in August, 1 month before the first semester of the sophomore year started. Instantly, there was a problem. Freshman year, Shoto finally truly experienced what his friends called stress. During high school, Shoto soared through classes without any challenge. They were too easy even, but the second he sat down for his first class, he realized what he was in for. No, he wasn't a business major like Tenya or a social work major like Izuku, which were, from what Shoto has seen, are very difficult majors to get through, but that didn't mean he was having a walk through the park. It was already a surprise to pretty much everyone but Izuku that Shoto wanted to be an agriculture major. He wanted a simple job without too much pressure. He had enough of that placed on him by his father. Shoto managed to keep his 4.0 GP, even had all A's, but it was a hassle. So, imagine Shoto's reaction when every morning since the day his neighbors moved in, there would be screaming, or the constant sounds of video games, or the loud music, albeit good, at the late hours of the night. He wasn't the only one suffering. Ochako, who worked every day of the week, would be woken up hours before her alarm went off after a long shift the day before. Hitoshi, who already didn't sleep for days on end, would lose sleep because of the music that went on till close to midnight, or the screaming that started as early as 5 a.m. Izuku and Tenya were constantly startled by the sounds of gunshots coming from the video games, especially considering they both have parents who work in law. All of that for 3 months built up into endless anger, stress, and boiling annoyance for their neighbors. Shoto was in the break room, scrolling through his phone with a bored expression. It was Friday, meaning he, Tenya, and Ochako were on shift while everyone else was either back at the apartment or staying at the university for a club or something. Seeing as Shoto came in earlier than Tenya and Ochako, his break was before theirs. Shoto had taken off his green apron, exposing the white polo shirt and black breathes that were his uniform. The apron was tossed on the chair at his side, where his feet were propped up because Shoto hated sitting in chairs like a normal person. Finished with Instagram, Shoto exited the app and spotted a couple of unanswered texts. Thankfully, these texts were part of the group chat fondly titled, "My Friends." Hitoshi Purple Heart. They're quiet. I don't like it when they're quiet. Sue Green Heart. Would you rather them be screaming? Or blasting music? Hitoshi Purple Heart. Don't put words into my mouth. I just find it suspicious when they're quiet. It's not right. When are y'all getting home anyway? Ochako Revolving Hearts. Shoto gets off in 2 hours. Tenya and I are off in 3. What's Izuku doing? Sue Greenheart. Izuku is with some classmates for a project. I'm just getting some groceries for later. Shoto. Thanks, Sue. How long have they been quiet? Hitoshi Purple Heart. They shut up around 8 p.m. yesterday. Haven't made a peep since. Not even that loud guy who screams every morning. Izuku Whiteheart. Sorry if I worried any of you. And that's strange. They're always so loud. Ochako Revolving Hearts. Exactly. It's so strange. Tenya Blueheart. Ochako. You should be working. Not texting. Shoto. You're texting too, Tenya. Tenya Blueheart. Only to catch Ochako's attention. Besides, my break is coming up soon. That is strange about our neighbors. Those hooligans are always so rambunctious. Hitoshi Purple Heart. Yeah, that's true. I'm enjoying it while it lasts. I finished 5 commissions. But it won't last. I say that the next time it happens, we do something about it. Shoto was quick to type out for anyone could ask a question or take the idea from him. Shoto. I volunteer. Izuku Whiteheart. That's a good idea. You're good at confrontation. Ochako Revolving Hearts. It's because he's a cold beach. Tenya Blueheart. Please get back to work, Ochako. Snorting softly, Shoto turned his phone off and grabbed his apron. Fixing it up a bit and checking for soil, Shoto tucked his phone away before leaving the break room. He needed something to distract him from the tiredness of waking up at 5 a.m. for 9 days in a row. The DK squad should have been smarter. They should have used their surprising amount of brain cells to see it coming. However, no, they had high hopes. High hopes that were sniped down and when they hit the ground, were stomped on with black boots with nails. Then again, how were they supposed to know? At the same time, though, one of them should have known better. With those hopes, the lot of them went to bed at reasonable times, overwhelmingly happy that the sounds of loud music were gone. Shoto and Hitoshi found themselves awake for a few hours but went to bed at times considered reasonable for the two of them. Shoto fell asleep at 2 a.m., while Hitoshi nodded off at 3. At 5:36 a.m., the screaming started. Loud cursing from a gruff and hoarse voice. The screaming lasted for at least 2 minutes. 2 minutes was all it took to wake up the whole apartment, before a high-pitched voice snapped even louder than the hoarse voice. "Katsuki, shut the F up." A loud crash came, then more yelling, and that yelling didn't stop. Judging by the multiple voices, the Deku squad had to assume whoever occupied the apartment next door were arguing. Unfortunately, these people didn't know the definition of quiet. Shoto grumbled angrily, rolled out of his small bed, grabbed a pair of baggy jeans, pulled said jeans on, and walked out of his bedroom into the living room, where his friends were already waiting. Izuku and Tenya were dressed for a workout. The two of them loved early morning runs, but they usually started at 6 o'clock rather than 5:30, while Ochako, who had fallen asleep on the couch watching YouTube videos, was dressed in pajamas. Sue was at the kitchen counter with a hot cup of coffee, a distressed look on her face. As the arguing continued, Hitoshi burst out from his room, dressed in a baggy black hoodie and gray sweatpants. He stomped towards the wall connecting the apartments and slapped the wall aggressively. "Stop!" he hollered, but it did nothing. Eye twitching, Hitoshi spun around and pointed a weak finger at Shoto, who stared aimlessly at the wall. "Make them shut up. Please. Do it." Hitoshi leaned forward, throwing his entire weight on the shorter boy. Shoto, being a relatively strong male, was able to support Hitoshi all the way up to him walking to the front door. Izuku pulled Hitoshi off, placing his head on his shoulder and running fingers through his purple hair, lightly shushing him. "I'm gonna jump out a window." Shoto rubbed down his t-shirt and fixed his hair before inhaling, and knocking on the door so hard it shut the entire argument up. There was whispering, some snapping, a Fenji growl, and a guy saying, "If it comes to it, you can and will get on your knees and beg for forgiveness." Shoto crossed his arms, standing straight with a look he has saved only for the bastards that harassed Ochako or Tsu. The door opened and that look quickly dropped. Standing in the doorway with an apologetic look was a tall, lanky male with broad shoulders. His shiny black hair was held into a small ponytail to show off his extremely symmetrical face and jaw. He was dressed in a thin light orange, deep V-neck t-shirt and baggy black sweatpants. After staring at one another for a few seconds, a shocked face crossed his face. "Oh, Todoroki." "Say Shiro," Shoto stuttered, face growing progressively redder with every second he stood in front of this guy, who was so goddamn tall. "Bro? I didn't know you left Mizudafu." Laughing, Shiro scratched his neck. "I could say the same to you." A shocked look formed on Shiro's face. "Oh, I'm distracting you." "Huh, sorry about them. I swear they aren't as bad as you think they are. They're just loud." Shoto stood on his toes to look over Shiro's shoulder to see a tall and muscular man with bright red hair holding a shorter blonde in his arms, his impressively large bicep keeping the blonde from screaming any louder. Shoto stiffened as Shiro leaned forward, breaching all standards of personal space to look at Shoto's friends, who were staring absolutely shell-shocked at the two. "Mind coming in? We have some food cooking and I think we should all talk." Suspicious, the group looked at one another. The first one to take the leap, of course, was Izuku, who brought Tenya and Ochako. Sue and Hitoshi, always the followers, trudged behind. The large group entered the apartment and the first thing Shoto noticed was that it was a carbon copy of their own minus the placement of the couch and the sets of instruments. Ochako wandered over to the TV, crouching down to look at the various kinds of video game consoles. Izuku and Tsu were in the kitchen, looking a lot at the pile of unwashed dishes. Tenya and Hitoshi stood at each other's sides, staring with dark expressions at their neighbors. Shoto awkwardly held himself as Shiro whispered to his friends. "I'm Shiro Hanta, by the way." "Hi." A girl with messy and short, rose gold hair cheered. Her dark skin went well with the pastel sweater she wore, and Shoto found himself wondering where she purchased her floral leggings. All in, she looked fairly normal, then Shoto made eye contact with her. Her eyes were black. Her sclera was pitch black and her iris was pure gold. An uneasy feeling filled Shoto had he shook the hand of this energetic woman. "I'm Ishido Mina, and I apologize for this dumpster fire of a human being." The blonde, who was still being held down by the redhead, grumbled. The redhead released the blonde, who slowly sat up, but didn't say anything. The redhead laughed, slapping the blonde on the back before approaching Hitoshi, who was the closet. Hitoshi turned bright red, clearly impressed with his muscles and tall stature. "I'm Kirishima Ejiro, and I'm sorry. I'm probably the guy you hear yelling while hearing video games. I'm sorry, that wasn't really manly of me." Hitoshi nodded, tucking his hands into his pockets while Kirishima moved to shake Tenya's hand. "The blonde is my boyfriend, Katsuki Bakugo." Bakugo grumbled softly, avoiding Shoto's look. "Where are Denki and Kyoka?" Shiro asked, startling Shoto as he hadn't realized he had left. "I checked their rooms, neither of them is there." Kyoka was called in by her boss, something about a bar fight right before closing that left most of the place wrecked. Bakugo grumbled. "Hard to believe Pikachu is at work, too, he gets weekends off." Kirishima checked his phone. "He's probably abusing that discount he gets." He chuckled lightly and looked at the group. "Anyways, we should probably bite the bullet and get to apologizing." Shoto let himself slump as Izuku joined his side, wrapping his arm around his shoulder with a nod. Ochako, who had been skipping through the multiple cases for video games, stood up and crossed her arms with an expectant look on her face, one that Hitoshi was mimicking with just a bit more "I want to kill you" energy. Tenya sighed, joining Tsu at her side to maintain a somewhat professional outlook. Shiro moved first, bowing slightly and grabbing the back of Bakugo's head to force him as well. Ishido and Kirishima followed suit. "Since we aren't all here, I know it won't be a real apology, but I should take responsibility," Shiro said. "You see, we're a band of sorts, and I'm considered their manager, so it's always been my responsibility to take control of them. I apologize for all the trouble we may have caused." Before anyone could make another comment, Hitoshi huffed. "I really wish you guys were DS who would have argued with us, but now I'm gonna be the D, if I don't at least hear you out. Shoto, what about you?" Shoto shrugged, still staring at Shiro. It was amazing and a little weird that one of the people Shoto thought he'd hate for the rest of his life was a familiar face. Standing straight, Shiro gestured to the wall connecting the apartments. "If it helps, we have soundproof paneling on the way, and until then, I'll keep them on in line." Tenya hummed, holding his chin with a small smile. "You are quite mature, Shiro. So long as the noise will stop, I see no issue with holding a grudge." Kirishima and Ishido cheered, jumping over to the group and wrapping their arms around them. Shoto tensed as he was pressed against Kirishima's body, catching the glare Bakugo was throwing him. Shiro laughed at the antics in front of him. He extended his hand and Shoto choked on his breath as Shiro's large hand rested on his head, ruffling his multicolored hair. "I hope we can be friends." Hanta felt comforted after Todoroki and his friends left the apartment. Sure, they had the fullest intention of telling the whole group to eat and shut up, but by the end of it, everyone had exchanged contact info, made good conversation, shared some Pillsbury crescents and coffee, and were on a relatively good foot by the end of it, though Shiso did promise if they made noise early in the morning again he would break down the door and kill all of them with a butter knife. The entire time, Hanta focused on Todoroki. The two had met their third year of middle school thanks to a project in a class neither of them has friends in and were friends all the way into their first half of high school before Todoroki mysteriously moved away halfway through their first year of school. The two, not exactly being best friends, lost contact, but Hanta occasionally thought back to the socially awkward boy he made friends with. It was surprising, then amazing, then horrifying, then amazing again for Hanta to see Todoroki again, and he wasted no time in getting caught up on what he had missed. Todoroki's dad has apparently pulled some strings and gotten him accepted into a fairly elite high school, but he had no choice to go and was all but forced to drop contact with his other friends, though Hanta seemed to be the only one he had. It was depressing, but Todoroki made light of it by joking around, something Hanta was unaware he could do, and even smiled, another action Hanta was unaware of. All in all, it was an A+ interaction. When the front door closed and Hanta instantly felt a chill go up to his spine. Mina held his shoulder, lifting herself with his weight and resting her chin into his shoulder. She had an evil glint in her gaze along with a smirk. Hanta, how come we never knew of your middle school fling with Mr. Shoto Hottie Todoroki? Too embarrassed to admit you had something with someone before, the tease died instantly and guilt washed over Mina's expression. Hanta stared forward with a new dead expression as silence filled the apartment. Mina released Hanta. Hanta, I'm so sorry I wasn't. It's cool, nothing I should be thinking about anyway. And, Todoroki wasn't a fling. We were friends for barely a year before he had to move. We lost contact and never thought of each other. Not a long, or emotional, story. Clearly unconvinced, Mina glanced at Ejiro, who was purposefully provoking Katsuki to avoid the conversation. It's fine, Hanta held out with a chuckle. Listen, we all have work off, Kyoka is coming home soon and Denki is on his way, so let's play a video game or something, but without the yelling. Ejiro and Katsuki quickly dropped their on-purpose bickering to turn on the SWH, instantly deciding they would be playing Smash Brothers without asking Hanta. Wanna join Mina? She shook her head, holding her phone and texting quickly. Nah, I know how you men get. I'm gonna next my new girlfriend. She waved her phone happily as she slipped into her room. If you get pizza, get me? Hawaiian we know. The boys said in unison, choosing their characters with amused smirks. Mina blew a kiss. My boys. Mina's bedroom door closed and Ejiro instantly slumped down. Katsuki leaned against the arm of the chair, and Hanta slouched forward. Mina was not only the brilliant pianist of the band, but she was also the unofficial mother. Hanta may keep them quiet, keep them from dying and make sure they don't get arrested, but Mina is the one who keeps them eating healthy, keeps them social, and makes sure their posture is proper so they don't forever damage their back. Over 3 years of this treatment, and the boys still haven't learned how to follow that last piece of advice. That half-and-half BSE seemed happy to see you, Katsuki grumbled as he smashed the attack button on his controller. You two really didn't have something going on when you knew one another? No, Hanta said, dodging Ejiro's slow attack. I mean, I knew he was gay and he knew I was pan, but nothing happened. Katsuki, you shouldn't be allowed to use Bowser anymore. Katsuki merely chuckled as he continued to sweep Ejiro and Hanta with ease. Anyway, no, nothing happened. Maybe he liked me, maybe I liked him, whatever, it was forever ago. Ejiro set the controller down as all his lives were taken. What do you mean, maybe he liked me, maybe I liked him? I take nothing happened as meaning there were no romantic feelings. Hanta shrugged his shoulder with a sigh. It was weird talking about the potential relationship he could have had about 5 years ago. Sure, sometimes he thought about Todoroki and what life would be like if he hadn't moved away, but did he ever like the guy? Maybe. Maybe not. He couldn't remember. Did you ever think he was pretty? Pretty? He's a pretty guy, dude. Hanta lightly kicked Katsuki from over Ejiro as his character perished. I guess. But so did everyone in the school who liked men. I wasn't special. So what if I did like Todoroki? I genuinely cannot remember if I did or didn't. Either way, it's not like anything is gonna happen. We were barely friends then, and we're barely friends now. It was a little depressing to say aloud, considering the fact that in middle school, Todoroki was Hanta's only friend and vice versa, but it was the truth. About 10 minutes later, and 20 games of Katsuki wrecking Hanta and Ejiro's sheet, Denki came home with 2 large bags of groceries. Hanta was a little surprised to see Denki had gotten a responsible amount of things, but he then realized Kyoka probably threatened him into getting appropriate things rather than Budweiser and Cheetos. As Hanta helped Denki put the groceries away, Ejiro and Katsuki continued to play Smash Brothers, though they were now working as a team against some CPUs. Guess what finally happened? Hanta said. He dumped the bread into the bread box Kyoka had bought a few months ago before helping Denki, who was significantly shorter than him, put the peanut butter away. Denki laughed. What? Our neighbors finally snapped and confronted us. No. Yes, and get this, all of them are our age and go to the same DMN college as us. The laugh that came out of Denki seemed a bit forced, but Hanta ignored it. He assumed it was because Denki was worn out from classes and work. He had been working extra hours despite being paid well enough for his share of rent and other bills. Hanta watched as Denki stuffed boxes of Pocky, energy drinks, and coffee beans into a plastic bag of his own, tied it up, then set it aside for himself. His smile looked normal, so Hanta once again assumed the stuff was for work. Anything else you want to tell me? Yeah. Hanta leaned against the counter, suspicious. The one who knocked was an old friend of mine, Shoto Todoroki. Now genuinely surprised, Denki made an O shape with his mouth. That's crazy, dude. What are the chances of that sheet? Hanta laughed. Low, I guess. The front door opened and Kyoka walked in with a sigh. Hello, boys. Hello, Kyoka. Did I miss anything? As Kyoka made herself some coffee, Ejiro filled both Kyoka and Denki in on what happened from how Katsuki had woken up, stubbed his toe, knocked sheet over and angered the neighbors to how they all exchanged numbers, even gave them Kyoka and Denki's numbers, with agreements to hang out soon, though none of them were sure how soon was. Denki seemed pumped about it. He was always willing to make new friends, while Kyoka could clearly care less about the situation, but she did mention that it would be nice to have more girls to talk to. They were quite nice, no? Yeah, nicer than I expected, Hitoshi agreed, graciously accepting the steaming cup of coffee Tenya handed him. Shoto, you've been kinda quiet. Shoto shrugged, eyes focused on the TV in front of him. He didn't see anything strange about it. Quiet was his shtick, wasn't it? Quieter than usual, that is. Hitoshi turned his body and leaned against Shoto's arm, snuggling into him the same way he would when they were in high school and found themselves still awake at the later hours. What's wrong? If there was something wrong, Shoto didn't know. Nothing, I think? I just feel dazed. From? Tenya asked, grabbing a soft blue blanket and draping it over the two boys. They both smiled. Tenya was always taking care of them. Shoto leaned his cheek against Hitoshi's hair. From seeing Siro, I guess. We used to be friends before I moved and joined our high school, so maybe that's why I'm so dazed, but my stomach also feels kinda weird too. Like, when I first saw him, my first bodily reaction was to panic and turn red and get all flustered. It only got worse once I realized it was Siro in front of me and not some random dude. Hitoshi eased in Shoto as he continued to talk and Tenya shrugged. Sounds gross, Hitoshi joked and Shoto felt himself smiling. Are we gonna do anything tonight? Ochako walked out of her room as if she were summoned to answer this very question. Ashido-san just asked Sue and I if we wanted to join her for some drinks tonight. She said if you guys wanted to come, she'd ask the others. Shoto hated crowds and bars and dancing and dressing up, as did Hitoshi, but they both liked drinking. Whenever the two drank, they had fun all night and clocked out at reasonable times without waking up. The headaches were usually worth the feeling of having slept more than 8 hours. With that in mind, the two boys shared a look and shrugged. Why not? If Izuku goes, sure, Shoto said. Izuku, who had been drinking his own coffee in the kitchen, gave the group an okay symbol with his hand. I will go as well, though I will most likely refrain from ingesting any alcohol. Tenya waved his hands and explained. Great, Ochako smiled. I'll tell Ashido-san so the boys can know. Suddenly, the weird feeling in Shoto's stomach returned. It was the crisp time of 10 p.m. and the Baku squad and Deku squad found themselves walking along the crowded streets with Ashido in the lead, laughing with her arms interlocked with an excited Ochako and an amused Sue. Bakugo wore an oversized gray champion hoodie, slightly baggy blue jeans, and white shoes, an outfit fitted so it wouldn't catch the attention of anyone at the bar. Kirishima wore something similar, a simple white t-shirt, a black bomber jacket with white floral sleeves, black jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Both boys stayed close, holding hands as Kirishima had his arm wrapped comfortably around Bakugo's waist, who scrolled through his phone and promptly ignored any and all conversation around him. Izuku wore a forest green t-shirt over a gray hoodie, simple black jeans, and semi-nice red shoes. He talked well with Kaminari, who was dressed in a short-sleeved black CRP top, light blue skinny jeans, and slightly heeled boots. He was the only male of the group wearing makeup, some golden eyeshadow, black lipstick, and mascara. Hitoshi, who wore a jean jacket, a black hoodie, and black jeans, complimented Kaminari on his makeup, and the two had spent a solid amount of the walk talking about the makeup before Izuku started asking about the club they were going to. The girls in the front wore various styles of clothes. Jiro wore a black ripped-up shirt, black skinny jeans, Doc Martens, and a red flannel, while Ishido was dressed in a sparkling magenta tube top and black shorts along with a pair of impressive heels. Ochako was dressed in a simple pastel pink dress, while Tsu wore a comfortable light green CRP top hoodie and black jeans, an outfit similar to Kaminari's own. Tenya, dressed in a dark blue dress shirt and black briefs, stood close behind the girls, subtly shooing off any guys who whistled at them or stared for too long. Shoto and Shiro stood in the middle of all of this, bantering back and forth with comfortable smiles. Shoto was dressed in a sleeveless hoodie with a barcode design on the chest, a maroon sweater that hung off his shoulders, black shorts, and black sneakers lent to him by Ochako, who surprisingly had the same shoe size as him. Shiro was wearing a loose white shirt, a black shirt underneath, blue jeans, a light gray beanie, and gray running shoes. When the group first got together, everyone was surprised to see that Kaminari and Hitoshi were the first people to gravitate to each other. Their excuse was that they had a lot of classes together, but even Shoto had to admit it was a little questionable for barely acquaintances to be so comfortable with each other like the two of them were. However, Shoto digressed. When he had spotted the group, he instantly moved to talk with Shiro rather than anyone else there, and Shiro didn't seem to mind. The two had a normal conversation, though Shoto had to occasionally pause when the unusual feeling in his chest seemed to get worse, all the way to the club Ishido had been leading them to. Everyone got inside okay. All it took was a simple show of the ID to the bouncer and they were inside the large club. Ishido quickly led the group away from the large crowds and Busy Bear to a hallway. The hallway was a little less crowded, filled with people smoking cigarettes or weed, making out, or simply talking with other people as the loud music thumped the floors and vibrated the walls. Ishido took the group into a less crowded area filled with tables, couches, a pool table, and a slightly less crowded bar. The music from the club was practically silenced inside this room, instead filled with lo-fi beats. The lights were LED, turned to a pastel pink shade to give a calm vibe. The occasional sound of pool ball hitting one another silenced the music, but it never faded completely. The two groups gathered to the surprisingly clean and unoccupied couches, sitting down with laughs as their individual conversations continued but slowly turned into one. Shoto turned pink as he was forced to ease closer to Shiro when they sat down, but eased the second he realized the one sitting next to him was Tsu, who casually rested her hand on Shoto's thigh with a tender smile. She knew better than anyone that he and Hitoshi never fared well with crowds or strangers. "I figured this would be better to start off," Ishido explained after making sure everyone was comfortable where they were sitting. "After a while, we can go dance?" she asked, pointing to the door they had come through. Everyone, even Shoto and Hitoshi, nodded their heads in agreement. Ishido smiled at that before pointing at her friends. "I know all of your orders but none of yours. Anyone care to help me?" Tenya quickly offered himself. He and Ishido walked away towards the bar, talking peacefully along the way. Shoto took the chance to scan the situation. Across from him on the other couch was Izuku, who was talking with Bakugo and Kirishima. Bakugo sat on Kirishima's lap, leaned into his taller form with a comfortable expression and posture. Sitting on the other side of those two were Hitoshi and Kaminari. Hitoshi sat on the couch while Kaminari sat on the arm of the chair. The two had flirtatious smirks on their faces and Shoto knew he had no longing to know what they were talking about. Next to Shoto was Shiro and Jiro. Jiro was sitting like Kaminari, though her leg was propped up while the other was falling limply against the couch. Shoto reminded himself of Tsu's presence by laying his head on her shoulder. She was talking with Ochako, who would be sitting next to Ishido if she wasn't off at the bar with Tenya getting drinks. Now aware of who was where, Shoto could feel Shiro's arm brushing against him, the occasional movement that would occur when he laughed at something Jiro said or when he moved his hand to gesture. When Ishido and Tenya came back with various kinds of drinks in their hands, the groups started talking as one, sharing random stories of their high school experiences or how college was going for them so far. Shoto laughed and made remarks at his friend's stories, listened carefully, and amused whenever someone of the Baku squad shared their own experiences. Shoto had to admit, the Baku squad was a lot more fun than his own. He shook his head at their stories, smiled and slapped one of his friends as they made sassy remarks at him. My brother Tuya hated my dad more than any of us, so every weekend he'd steal his credit card and take me and my siblings on some wild trips without our dad even noticing, Shoto explained, sipping his fourth drink of the night. Once, he took us to the beach and took me and my siblings so far out into the water we couldn't even see the beach. We stayed there for hours, ignoring every call from our dad and sending every picture we took to our mom or our friends. On the way back, we got pulled over by a cop. Kaminari, who was probably the drunkest of the bunch and now lying in Hitoshi's lap, cut in. Did you get arrested? The silence and small smirk from Shoto that followed sent the Baku squad into hysterics. Shiro, who had left a few minutes ago to smoke some weed with a couple of strangers, laughed and wrapped his arm against Shoto, causing the now familiar feeling in his stomach to rage on, though the alcohol and the strange feeling of friendship between the two settled it down pretty quickly. Our dad paid our bail. Tuya was grounded for 18 weeks, and now I can say I've been in HNCFFS. Hitoshi lifted his eyebrows. Kankiwai. You're disgusting. Shoto shot back as he was pulled into Shiro's side. A few more minutes passed before the group decided it was about time they left the Lofi loft and went to the club. Ashido led the group once again, dragging a laughing Ochako with her. The second the group entered the club, they split up. The girls moved quickly to dance, Ochako and Tsu using their alcohol to boost their confidence and dance with another. Ochako wrapped her arms around Tsu's neck while she held her waist. They smiled, talking as their hips moved to the loud beat of the music. Jiro and Ashido, clearly experienced in the club life, quickly found girls to dance with. Shoto laughed along with Shiro and Kaminari as Ashido grinded with a girl and Jiro simply bumped shoulders with the girl she was dancing with. Izuku had been dragged in by Kirishima, who let Izuku go to do his own thing as he and Katsuki danced quite similarly to Ochako and Tsu. Tenya, not one for clubs at all, moved to the sidelines where he was quickly seized into a conversation by a fairly attractive man, leaving Shoto with Hitoshi, a flirty and drunk Kaminari, and a slightly high Shiro. The four boys swayed subtlety to the music for a while until the song changed into something real SXL. Kaminari instantly wrapped his arms around Hitoshi's neck, pulling him down and into the dance floor. Shoto shook his head as Hitoshi followed Kaminari's movements, vanishing into the crowd no doubt to unashamedly grind on one another. I think Shinso and Denki are a little more than classmates, Shiro leaned down to whisper into Shoto's ear. Shoto, still moving lightly to the beat, nodded his head. He had the suspicion Hitoshi was hiding something from the group. He wasn't around as much as he used to. He'd come home a little scuffed up, his weekend plans were becoming more crowded, and he was constantly texting someone. Classmates was definitely the wrong word for those two, but Shoto didn't want to jump to conclusions. Mind if I? Shoto tensed up as hands grabbed his hips, stopping him in his tracks. His cheeks turned red and his breath low as Shiro moved his hips to a better rhythm for the beat. The second Shoto got the hang of it, Shiro released him. He laughed. Sorry, was that weird? Shoto exhaled and smiled. No, he admitted, smiling wider when Shiro moved to stand in front of him, copying his same swaying. How have you been these years? From the sounds of all those stories of grocery stores, beaches, road trips, and McDonald's, you've had a lot of fun. Shoto didn't argue when Shiro pulled him deeper into the crowd. He didn't mind it when bodies moved against him, forcing him closer to Shiro. I've had fun too, but you seem to have had more. Yeah, Shiro laughed, once again holding Shoto's waist when the song changed into a more mellow tune. I love my friends, and I love what we've become. A band, Shoto mused, closing his eyes as the music filled his ears. Sounds fun. It is, Shiro spoke. Shoto didn't tense this time when Shiro came closer. He didn't allow that weird feeling in his stomach to override his senses when Shiro's chest was against his own. He didn't even stop moving to the music as their bodies connected more than they ever had in the one night. You know, sometimes I'd think about you. Todoroki Shoto, the boy who vanished from my life like the mystery he was before we met. Sometimes I wondered, what kind of friends would we have been if you hung around? Would you have been friends with others? Would I even be friends with the others if I had you? Shoto hummed. Quite the questions. Did you ever think about me? Shoto didn't react when Siro touched him once again to change his swaying. Yes, sometimes. Mostly when I was mad at my dad, when I wanted to remind myself why I shouldn't forgive him for the things he's done to me. I would remind myself of how he forced me to get rid of my first friend. I haven't thought of you recently. But I never forgot about you, the two said at the same time. Shoto nodded his head as Siro chuckled. It's nice seeing you again, Todoroki. Shoto looked up at Siro, smiling as he watched the familiar face of his first friend nod his head to the beat, eyes closed, and gleeful expression to him. Lowering his head again, his forehead barely brushing against Siro's chest, Shoto mumbled, "Call me Shoto." "Okay, Shoto." "Okay, Hanta." Shoto closed his eyes as Hanta touched his waist again, and a new feeling rushed in when he let go, longing. Hitoshi rolled on his side, his bare chest instantly making contact with the back. He didn't react. He didn't jump or scream or look around in panic. Hitoshi simply acknowledged the yellow tuft of blonde hair with a black strip before pulling the man in his bed closer to his chest, kissing his marked shoulder when he stirred in bed. Denki rolled himself, wrapping his arms around Hitoshi's neck, a habit he created long before they started dating, and nuzzling into his chest with a small, waking up hum. The room was dark, the only light coming through the half-opened blinds as the fan above moved slowly. Clothes from the night before were tossed on the ground in a sloppy fashion, but the bedroom door was firmly closed and Hitoshi could only assume it was locked. Hitoshi and Denki met at the grocery store where Denki worked part-time. It was exactly 1 hour after the store opened at 4 a.m. and both Hitsuhai and Denki were running on low amounts of sleep, horrible gas station coffee, and stress. As Hitoshi bought some coffee beans and other groceries, Denki flirted away, which was greatly received by Hitoshi. Long story short, numbers were exchanged, hangouts turned into kinda dates, and eventually, the two are making out in the university's planetarium. Hitoshi figured it wasn't a good idea to keep his boyfriend from his friends, but at the same time, would they be happy to know Hitoshi was snuggled up to their annoying neighbor of about 5 months? He thought not. "Are your roommates home?" Denki asked, loosening his hold on Hitoshi's neck so he could reach for his phone. Besides the many Twitter notifications, Hitoshi's phone was barren of messages. His wallpaper seemed subtle, an aesthetic picture of 2 unrecognizable boys kissing on a car, but it was actually a picture and Denki spent a good hour trying to make. "I'm sure mine are still asleep." Hitoshi hummed. It was fairly early. "Everyone but Sue is working at the shop today, and she's probably at the YMCA swimming around. Stay as long as you want." Denki sighed happily, turning positions so he was resting on Hitoshi's chest as he lied on his back. Hitoshi rested his hands on Denki's back. "As long as you want." Shoto nibbled quickly on the graham cracker Ochako offered him. He, Izuku, Ochako, and Tenya all worked on Sundays, and while they didn't regret their choice to go out last night, he and Ochako were certainly feeling the consequences of it. Izuku, being the good boy he is, didn't drink too much and came home sober, unlike Shoto and Ochako. Shoto wasn't drunk, but he definitely wasn't sober when he stumbled to bed. Ochako, on the other hand, was gone. Just gone. Sue, before she left for her usual swimming, made her hangover mix for the two, and it did wonders for the two, especially Ochako. Working the register, Shoto was able to see Ochako and Izuku watering and preparing the flowers for the later costumers, seeing as no one in their right mind would enter a flower shop at 8:45 a.m. unless they really effed up their relationship. Tenya was off preparing deliveries with a couple of other coworkers, and seeing as the bitchy manager was off for the day, it was a fairly relaxing morning of the staff. Shoto leaned forward and was instantly jolted straight when he received a text. "Hanta Siro. Hey dude. I'm out scheduling some gigs and I figured you'd be awake. Thought I'd say hi. Shoto. Thanks for thinking of me. I'm at work with Izuku, Ochako, and Tenya. Hanta Siro. You work at a floral shop, right? Shoto. Yeah. Hanta Siro. That's cool. I work at a bar, but I get the weekends off. Shoto. I guess it's cool. A bar sounds more exciting. Hanta Siro. It really isn't. I should get going. Maybe we could get lunch? What time are you off? Shoto. Hanta Siro. Cool, see you then. Shoto. Over text, Shoto probably sounded one-dimensional or unenthusiastic, but he was quite the opposite. In fact, as he stared at Hanta's last text, Shoto could feel his cheeks turning red and stomach doing small spins. It was weird, but at this point, Shoto was a little embarrassed to admit he had gotten used to the feeling. How was it possible that he had been catching up with Hanta for one day and he already was making Shoto feel one emotion, and it was one he didn't know squat about? You look excited, Shoto, Izuku said obviously. Something good happen? Shoto covered his mouth as his blush grew. I think. At 11:56 p.m. Hanta walked into the small and humble floral shop. The outside was pink and green, pastel with countless appealing flowers on display, and the inside kept the same color scheme. Flowers of various shades, sizes, and shapes surrounded Hanta as he moved to the front of the shop, where the familiar face of Shoto Todoroki was. Sitting on the counter he stood behind was Uraraka while Midoriya counted a semi-thick stack of money to Ida, who was writing away on a brown clipboard. Other employees walked from the back of the store with watering cans, dirty gloves, empty pots, bags of soil, and a lot of other gardening things. Hanta took one look at everyone's uniforms and instantly felt out of place. He was dressed relatively nicely since he had to look professional when booking places for his friends to perform at. His shirt was navy blue, slightly buttoned down for a more casual look, and his gray jacket was also unbuttoned. His breathes, which matched his breathes, were the nicest part of the outfit, and the white sneakers were the least professional. Shoto closed his eyes for a few seconds at something Uraraka said and turned his head, so when he opened his eyes he was looking directly at Hanta, who waved curtly. Shoto had a wide-eyed reaction, his body had turned stiff, and his ears were a little pink. Hanta, still feeling awkward, laughed and walked closer to the counter. He greeted Uraraka with a wave, gave Ida a handshake since that what he went for, and offered Midoriya a fist bump that the curly-haired male accepted. Shoto and Hanta stared at one another for a few seconds, both debating on how they should greet each other, but they both decided with a simple and short hug. This is a nice place, is it a chain or? Family-owned, actually, Midoriya explained, tucking the money he was counting back into the register. The top manager is the daughter of the owner and we were just lucky enough to get jobs here. Not a lot of the family wanted to be part of the business, you know. Hanta nodded even though he didn't relate. His mother was a stay-at-home mother while his father worked at a car factory. His grandfather was a quilter and his grandmother was a sewer, but they didn't expect any of their children to be like them. In all honesty, his family didn't really care he was a manager for a band. Shoto, your lunch break is coming up. Shoto nodded. He vanished through a door, leaving Hanta to talk with Uraraka and Midoriya. A few minutes later, Shoto returned. He had removed his green apron and covered his white polo shirt with a yellow Nirvana hoodie. Shoto told his friends and manager he'd be back in 40 minutes or so, then he and Hanta left the shop and made their way down the street. The two talked about their night before, how they enjoyed one another's company and getting to know one another's friends, how they suspected something was going on between Denki and Shinso, and how they were very impressed with how Midoriya managed to get along with Ejiro and Katsuki, though the alcohol the three consumed might have been the assisting factor. Everyone was so sick the next day, Hanta explained as he and Shoto crossed the crowded street. But they all bounced back pretty quick, they're like that. I was up before everyone else, and since I didn't drink or smoke too much, I was able to pop some Advil and call it a day. Spotting a restaurant, Hanta wrapped his arm around Shoto's and led him towards the familiar building. This place is good, cheap too. Getting sat down was easy, the woman working recognized Hanta and quickly had him sat down at a table with Shoto, whom she pointed at with an impressed expression. Hanta waved her off. As the conversation continued on, Hanta was happy to see Shoto hadn't changed too much since middle school. He was still quiet and calm, smiled when you said something he liked and gave you a bland look when you said something he didn't understand, mumbled his responses in a tone Hanta had learned, and he was surprised he still knew how to hear, to understand, and, despite being raised in a relatively formal family, could quote a meme without a moment's hesitation. It was almost as if they were still those kids walking down the hallway talking amongst each other, and leaving everyone wondering, how are they friends? Do you remember Endo? Shoto made an expression Hanta recognized, his lips slightly parted, eyes narrowed, eyebrows furrowed, shoulders slouched. It was his, I'm trying to be a normal human, expression. Yes. Yes, I do. Endo Sakura, right? Right. Remembered she confessed to you that one time? I guess you don't remember that every girl in our grade confessed to you. Anyway, she and I saw one another. She was wondering how you were doing. Oh, cool. Hanta smiled softly. You don't care, do you? Shoto flipped his noodles. We weren't friends. I was your only friend, right? Yeah, you were. Hanta sipped his drink as he studied Shoto. He didn't look sad or upset about it. He actually looked unfazed, almost comfortable with the fact. Doesn't that bother you? Shoto shook his head. Everyone else liked me because of my looks, or because I was popular. You liked me because I was me. He blushed a bit but continued on. You were the only person I liked, the only person who I wanted to walk with to class, the only person I wanted to sit with while eating lunch, the only person I wanted to talk to, or walk home with, or sit with on the bus for school trips. I liked you the most. Dude, Hanta held his heart, placing his forehead on the table as his face heated up. I need you to stop before you make me cry. Oh, I'm sorry, Shoto said, sounding very seriously apologetic. People have told me I have a tendency to make others depressed. Hanta shot up quickly, astonished. Who told you that? Whoever told you that has no idea what they're saying. You're awesome. Shoto tilted his head. But I'm not fun, right? No, you are fun. I am. You are. Oh. Shoto looked down at his food and for a second, Hanta thought Shoto wouldn't react, but he was proven wrong quickly. Shoto smiled. It was shaky and could be mistaken as forced, but Hanta knew that it wasn't forced, it was pure. It was an excited and happy and slightly nervous smile, and the small pink blush that covered Shoto's cheeks showed that. I think you're very fun too, Hanta. Hanta smiled widely. Thanks. At 12:56, Shoto said goodbye to Hanta, stomach full, and social battery completely charged. Shoto, welcome back, how was lunch? One of Shoto's coworkers asked with a bright smile. Izuku, who had been working the register for Shoto while he was on break, looked up. Yeah, it must be nice, catching up with a childhood friend. Shoto smiled brightly, startling every employee that wasn't Izuku, Ochako, or Tenya. It was great, thank you for asking. She smells like lemongrass and sleep. She tastes like apple juice and peach. Oh, you would find her in a Polaroid picture. And she means everything to me. It was always a good day. What Kyoka was singing She by Dodi. Hanta smiled to himself as Kyoka continued to sing, the slightly tense air that was surrounding the room dying. Katsuki and Ejiro continued talking, Katsuki sitting at his drums while Ejiro held his bass in his hands. Mina and Denki were doing their usual thing when the group was preparing for a gig, taking Snapchat pictures or posting horrible selfies of their bandmates onto Instagram. Hanta didn't care, though. His friends weren't terrible and they clearly had enough practice, so he would let them do whatever they wanted to calm down. Kyoka sang sappy lesbian love songs, Katsuki was whipped for Ejiro, and Mina and Denki acted like teenagers at a One Direction concert. What would he do? Hanta would stand on the sidelines and pretend he was doing something important so no one would bother him. Just as Hanta was pretending to look at an important paper, his phone buzzed. He was slightly annoyed since he was sure he had put his phone on Do Not Disturb, but that annoyance vanished when he saw the text was from Shoto. Shoto, I forgot to ask, you said you were finding places for your band to perform. Did you find some? Hanta. I'm at one right now. Shoto. Hanta. The pseudo bar, it's run by a bunch of ex-convicts who wanted to fix themselves up. Nice people, I talk a lot with them. Shoto. That's a coincidence. My brother Tuya, remember, he got me and my siblings arrested, used to work with them. Hanta. Small world. Is he still connected to them? Shoto. Is Tenko Shimura around? Hanta. Shoto. Ask him if he knows a Tuya Todoroki and get back to me. Hanta, deathly curious, shoved his phone in his pocket. He looked around briefly, spotting the man in his mid-20s helping his coworker and friend Himiko Toga clean up the floors. "Hey, Shimura." Despite the fact he went by Shigaraki for a while, Shimura still responded to his real name. He looked up slowly, smiling slightly when he realized Hanta was the one who called him. "Do you know Atuya Todoroki?" Instantly, Shimura dropped the mop in his hands and turned a bright shade of red. "Why are you asking about Tenko's fiancé?" Katsuki fell from his drum stool instantly. Hanta stared with a gaping mouth as Shimura crumbled to the floor in a red mess. "Hanta, they're engaged?" "Shoto, tell Tenko I said hi. I have to work." "Hanta, you bet me." Amused, Hanta laughed. "Shoto says hi, Shimura." Shimura shyly looked at Hanta through his fingers. "You know Shoto?" "Yeah, we're neighbors and friends." "Friends," Katsuki said sarcastically, rolling his eyes as Ejiro helped him to his feet. Shimura looked at Katsuki briefly before looking at Hanta. "What does that mean?" "It means they're Denki shrieked as he was nudged off the stage and onto his back. Thankfully, the stage was super low and Denki had experience in falling off of things, so he bounced back very quickly from being betrayed by the singer of his band. "What the hell, Kyoka? What if I hit my head and got a concussion? What if I cracked it open and couldn't perform?" Denki gasped dramatically. "What if I died?" Kyoka shook her head. "Well, that's what you get for talking about stupid things. Hanta and Todoroki aren't like that." "Yeah," Hanta defended, choosing to ignore the intense burning coming from his ears. "We're friends, I swear." Despite being kind of an awkward guy with long limbs and a thin frame, Shimura could be scary considering his past as a criminal. No, he never killed anyone or even committed any serious crimes, just vandalism and some weak connections to some pretty serious criminals, but not real threats. "Friends," Hanta repeated when he caught his friends staring at him. "Friends don't grind against one another at a club." Hanta was quick to defend himself as he saw Shimura go from confused to absolutely blank. "Denki and Shinso were grinding, we were dancing. You call one another by your first names. We did that in middle school, it's not weird. You've been texting him every day since you saw each other, and you went to lunch today and came home with a huge grin." Mina's was the hardest to debunk or argue with, so Hanta was left sputtering and waving one hand at his friends and the other at Shimura, who was looking at Hanta with narrowed eyes. Who could blame him? As far as he was concerned, Hanta was touching upon his brother-in-law. This went on for a few more minutes, and the longer it went, the more flustered Hanta was, the more his friends were getting cocky, and the scarier Shimura was looking. "Look!" Hanta finally yelled, face completely red with both embarrassment and frustration. "I used to like him, okay? Like, a lot, but that was a long time ago and I'm sure he never liked me that way. Even if I still had feelings for Shoto, I'm sure someone like him could do better than—" Hanta cut himself off with a slow inhale. Now was not the time to show off his self-confidence issues. "Nothing has happened, and I doubt anything will happen." Careful but quickly, Mina asked, "Are you upset with us? We didn't mean to make you angry, we just—" "I know, Mina." Hanta was quick to approach his friend, opening his arms for Mina to hug him. "I'm not mad, just a little frustrated, I guess." In that case, Mina pushed Hanta away, grabbing his collar and aggressively shaking him. "You liar. You said there was nothing between you and Todoroki." Ejiro piped in quickly, "Yeah, dude. You said you couldn't remember if you liked him or not." As Hanta was being called out, Shimura pulled out his phone, called someone, and started talking almost instantly. "Hey, honey, you not gonna believe this." As Shimura walked away, vanishing down a hallway that would lead to the bathrooms or an employee break room, Hanta sighed, smiling slightly as Mina continued to shake him. His smile turned solemn. What would someone like Shoto want with someone like me? Pushing aside the afternoon's confession, Hanta smiled thinly at the people passing. Some people recognized him, stopping to ask questions about the band and how they're doing, but no conversations lasted longer than a few minutes. Hanta didn't mind, he wasn't looking for a conversation after what had happened a few hours ago. The others did a good job pretending it didn't happen, though Hanta managed to catch Mina's concerned glances every now and then along with how Ejiro and Katsuki lightly bickered while occasionally looking over at Hanta, who they must have assumed couldn't see them or assumed he was doing actual work on his clipboard. Shimura had calmed down after talking a bit with his fiancée and even assured Hanta that he didn't care. He was just a little protective over Shoto considering everything that had and was going on with his family. Hanta didn't completely understand it, but he was one of the few people out there to know why Shoto had his scar, so he didn't pry, simply thanked Shimura for not killing him, and the two didn't talk about anything other than sound, lighting, and capacity for the rest of the day. It was embarrassing for Hanta, admitting that he had feelings for Shoto when they were younger after being so adamant that they were simply friends, but it was a little relieving to have his best friends know some more about him. Besides, if Shoto did find out, which he wouldn't, Hanta was sure nothing bad would happen. Shoto was the kind of guy who would reject 10 girls in one day, and the next day still awkwardly greet them with a hand wave. Worst case scenario, Hanta would feel a little awkward but eventually restore his friendship to normal. Or as normal as a friendship with Shoto Todoroki could get. Yeah, Hanta assured himself multiple times, that's what would happen. Hanta. Kyoka slapped her hand comfortably on Hanta's shoulder with a cool smile. Care for a drink before showtime? Hanta nodded. He and Kyoka walked to the bar where Kurojiri, a tall and broad man with dark skin and jet black hair with purple streaks, cleaned glasses. Kyoka and Hanta always had the most platonic relationship in the group. Kyoka was platonic with everyone, but her and Hanta were the kind of relationship that could never happen. They drank together, therefore saw each other at their worst/most disgusting, smoked together, and opened up to one another. Practically siblings, so Kyoka could always tell when Hanta needed a break. When he needed to sit down and breath or step outside for a quick smoke. Are you still thinking about what happened at sound testing? Hanta accepted the short glass from Kurojiri. A little, yeah. Hanta could never lie to Kyoka, morally and literally she would know. I guess it's weird to admit it. Maybe if we weren't reconnecting, then I wouldn't be too embarrassed about it, but Shoto's becoming a good friend again and in such a short time. It's weird to be aware that years ago, I wanted to be something more to him. I think it doesn't have to mean anything unless you want it to, Kyoka said as she spun her glass in her hand. I'll be honest with you, I hate the stereotypes that lesbians like to U-Haul, or that gay people tend to rush into relationships too early, but I do think, if you think something could happen, just FING do it, man. Laughing a bit, Hanta teased, and how many times have you talked to that girl in your music composition class? Kyoka turned pink and glared at Hanta, kicking his ankle weakly. He laughed, taking a drink from his glass with a sigh. Do you even think someone like Shoto would like me though? Yeah, Kyoka said with a shrug. You're, like, a solid 7. That's impressive coming from you, but what's Shoto? Kyoka blinked. A 10 I guess. See. I really don't, Kyoka grumbled as she took a seat. Hanta followed. Do you still like Shoto? No? Maybe? I don't know. On one hand, I get all excited and fluffy when I see him or text him, and I think he's really pretty, but on the other, maybe I'm just happy to see him again. He was my best friend before you and the others, so it's obvious it'd be on cloud 9 from seeing him. I guess I wouldn't mind trying it with Shoto, but he's he's like Mr. Perfect. Kyoka popped her lips. Perfect doesn't exist. Shoto's perfect. He's pretty and handsome, has a perfect body, has a personality that leaves you wanting to know more, loves animals, and his voice is really nice. Hanta rambled, cheeks pink as he rambled on about the man. Just, wow. He has to have flaws, you would know, wouldn't you? Hanta went quiet as he considered it. Kyoka, ever the patient, sipped her drink and waited for Hanta, who opened his mouth every now and then to talk but retracted every time. Finally he started. He's really dense, and sometimes he's brash and he used to be kind of mean. He's bad at socializing. I've seen him try to befriend people, it never went well. Sometimes he blanks on things, forgets things, and you have to wait for him to come up with something, but then he makes this face, and then you realize he's trying to relate with you, be normal and fun, and all that annoyance washes away. Kyoka stared at Hanta, waiting for him to have a realization he just couldn't fathom. Hanta slumped, ducking his hand into his arms with a sigh. He set his drink down, waving away Kurojiri when he moved to refill it. I have an idea, but I can't tell you. Hanta sat up quickly at the sound of Kyoka standing and watched in confusion as his best friend speed walked to the stage. He lost sight of her just as she was wrapping her arm around Katsuki's shoulders and leading him backstage. Shoto was sitting on the couch, enjoying the new silence the befriending of their neighbors brought, a small smile on his face every time he thought about his most recent conversation with Hanta. After he had gone back to work, Shoto was sure his phone would be filled with texts from Tenko and maybe a few from Tuya. He was right. He was dressed in a white sweater, black leggings, and cozy gray socks with a book in his hand. In the other room, Hitoshi was drawing away with his headset, talking with some of his online friends. Tenya was in the kitchen with Izuku, making tea as they shared notes from their lecture. Ochako was on the floor next to Shoto, borrowing his Nintendo Switch to play Animal Crossing. All in all, it was a normal night, but the peace and quiet was a great bonus. A few minutes later, Sue walked out dressed in a gray sports bra and sweatpants, her green hair in a comfortable but complicated updo, her phone carefully in her hand as she texted away. "Ochako, have you checked your phone at all?" Ochako shook her head. Shoto watched briefly as she beat a rather ugly villager with her star net. Kyoka texted, she wanted to know if any of us wanted to come to Desudo to watch the band perform. "While that sounds fun," Tenya said, "I feel I've had enough fun for the weekend." Izuku nodded his head in agreement. Hitoshi is clearly occupied. Everyone turned to look at Hitoshi's door, which had a handwritten "Do Not Disturb" sign up. "Apologies, Itsu. I don't mind, I can go alone." Ochako quickly jumped up. "I can go with you." She always jumped at the chance to have some time with Tsu. It was almost unbelievable how the two weren't dating yet, especially considering how they were acting at the club. "Shoto, do you want to come with?" Shoto rubbed his lips together. He was fairly relaxed, but then again he wouldn't hate seeing Hanta's band live. He shrugged and nodded his head, allowing Ochako to pull him off the couch so the three of them could change for the night. Shoto decided on a dark beige turtleneck, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, black briefs with rips on the knees, and white Adidas sneakers. It was simple, comfortable, but also not sloppy. Ochako wore a loose pastel pink shirt, a black shirt underneath, high-waisted black button-up briefs, and very light pink boot heels. Tsu wore a spaghetti-strap black tank top with vertical white strips that tied in the front, a jean jacket, a green skirt that her shirt tucked into, and black boots. The three checked for their wallets, put their phones on vibrate, said goodbye to the boys, and were off to Desudo with Shoto leading them. The three arrived at the low-key bar in 30 minutes. It was fairly crowded, normal for a regular bar, and as Tsu and Ochako searched for a table, Shoto walked to the bar to say hello to Kurojairi, the bartender. The two males talked for a few minutes before Shoto ordered Tsu, Ochako, and his regular drink orders. Kurojairi gave the three drinks on the house but warned Shoto he'd have to pay for the next ones. Shoto didn't expect anything less. Just as Shoto set the drinks down, he was pulled into a hug. Shoto returned the hug instantly as he recognized the height and long arms around him. "Hey, Tenko, how have you been?" "Good," Tenko mumbled as he released Shoto. "Ladies." Tsu and Ochako waved happily to Tenko, clinking their drinks together before sipping on them. "I assume you're here to see Hanta and his band?" "Yeah, Kyoka invited us, but our other friends were either too tired or too busy." Shoto sat down, listening as Tenko talked with his friends in a familiar manner. The group always went to Desudo when they wanted to go out for drinks, so they were all recognized regulars. Some were even considered family, though Shoto was a given since he was the future brother-in-law to the manager of the bar. Izuku and Ochako got along well with Himiko, who was less than shy about her attraction to the two. Tsu was a stubborn rock for the rest of the day when she found that out, and Tenya was always getting into long-winded conversations with Kurojairi. Hitoshi has a weird relationship with Twice, a man struggling with addiction, and did, as the two were always seen just chilling on the couches of the bar with void expressions. Shoto once thought they did acid or something and chose to leave that to Tenya. "What kind of band are they anyway?" Shoto hooked in on that question. "A cover band, but they don't typically stick to a certain genre. I think they're doing alternative today, but I'm not sure." Tenko shrugged and looked at the stage. "And look at that, I'm needed." Tsu, Ochako, and Shoto turned to the stage where they found Hanta waving Tenko over from the side, a panicked look on his face. Though I doubt it's about anything band-related. Had it not been for the ruffle of the hair Tenko gave Shoto, he would have missed the teasing look from his brother-in-law. As Tenko walked away, Shoto turned to the girls. What did that mean? Obviously, Tsu said, he's teasing you about Zero. Oh, Shoto blushed and quickly looked at the stage. He watched as Hanta grabbed Tenko's shoulders and leaned into him, the panicked look growing worse when Tenko started talking. Do you really think so? Ochako smiled cheekily. My, Shoto, is it possible you've got a crush? Shoto turned redder. He looked down at his hands as he grabbed his drink, wiping away the dripping water on the side of the glass. And maybe, he stuttered, I don't really know. Do you think he likes me? Tsu and Ochako looked at one another before their cheeks turned pink. So cute, they whispered softly. A few more minutes passed of Shoto asking Ochako and Tsu what they thought of the night, about Hanta and Tenko, and eventually, the conversation shifted into classes. Their conversation stopped when the lights turned dim and a spotlight went to the stage. Jiro stood at the mic dressed in a jean jacket, leggings, and a black shirt. She waved happily at the people who cheered for her before winking at Denki, who instantly started playing his guitar. Oh, Hannah. I want to feel you close. Oh, Hannah. Come lie with my bones. Oh, Hannah. Don't look away. Oh, Hannah. Just look at me the same. Jiro shook her head to the beat of drums Katsuki played before she leaned into the mic. I don't want to be your friend, I want to kiss your lips. Shoto stiffened and felt a chill go up his spine when his eyes caught Jiro's. She was looking at him on purpose. I want to kiss you until I lose my breath. She winked and nodded her head to the side. I don't want to be your friend, I want to kiss your lips. I want to kiss you until I lose my breath. Tsu and Ochako glanced at each other with small blushes, but Shoto's gaze was somewhere else. The direction Jiro moved her head was to the side of the stage, slightly off of it. Shoto was sure it was nothing, but his breath hitched severely when he saw Hanta leaned against the wall, looking confused and red in the face as Jiro continued to sing. Oh, Hannah. Tell me something nice. Like flowers and blue skies. Oh, Hannah. I will follow you home. Although my lips are blue and I'm cold, Shoto was now aware of every feeling in his body the second Hanta and him made eye contact. Both boys turned dark red, which Shoto expected from him, but Hanta? I don't want to be your friend, I want to kiss your lips. I want to kiss you till I lose my breath. Suddenly, everything was making sense to Shoto. He looked at Tsu and Ochako. They were sitting close, shoulder bumping and faces vermilion, as they watched Jiro sing, sway her hips, smile at his bandmates who all had the same knowing glint in their eyes. Shoto inhaled slowly and left the table, pushing through the thin crowds. His heart was heavy and beating fast as he approached Hanta, who watched out of the corner of his eye as he approached. I don't want to be your friend. Lose my breath. I don't want to be your friend. Lose my breath. Hanta turned to face Shoto. They stared at one another. Hi. Hi. Wanna talk? Yeah. Is this okay? Hanta asked as he moved to lock the door. Shoto nodded his head, body leaned against the sink of the surprisingly clean bathroom. Hanta locked the door to the bathroom, but leaned against the door. Shoto assumed it was either to keep distance between him and Shoto or to make sure no one would try to get inside during this conversation. Despite being down the hallway and a full room between them, Shoto could hear Jiro singing Dead Girl in the Pool by Girl in Red. So, Shoto started as he picked at the hem of his shirt. Do you want to start or? Can I ask you something? Hanta interrupted, staring at the wall with a nervous look. Shoto nodded, which Hanta saw from the corner of his eye. You don't have to answer, but I do really want to know the answer, like a lot. So, back in middle school did you ever, like me? Like the way those girls liked you? Tucking his chin into his turtleneck, Shoto stared at the tile floor. Yes. Really? Hanta sounded shocked. Disbelief was splattered all over his face as he stared at Shoto, who was giving him occasional glances to make sure shock didn't turn into disgust or anger. Really? Hanta repeated, this time in a deep whisper. How long? Shoto shrugged. A long time. Probably a month into knowing you. Hanta moved from the door to the wall next to it. When did you stop? Hesitation choked Shoto for a second, leaving him open-mouthed as Hanta watched him, the shock slowly dying into a calm look. I don't think I ever stopped. The shock returned and, thankfully, didn't turn into anything negative. Remember at the club? How I said that I didn't think about you, but I didn't forget. Hanta nodded. It's like that, I didn't think about my feelings for you, but I never forgot them, or I never stopped feeling them. Have you dated anyone before? Once, Shoto admitted. I liked him the same way I liked you, but it didn't last very long, so, yeah. Though he was red and embarrassed and felt the overwhelming urge to sprint out of the bathroom and down the street, Shoto felt a small relief admitting it, though he didn't think it would be to Hanta himself. Did you? Yeah, Hanta said, once again interrupting Shoto. He moved once again so he was on the same wall as Shoto, staring at the door as if to obey it to remain closed to matter who pushed against it. Thankfully, no one had yet started knocking against it. I liked you too. Was it because girls were always confessing to me? Is that why you didn't tell me? No. Why didn't you tell me? Was I too plain for you? No. I didn't think you'd feel the same way, the two males said at the same time. Hanta laughed. How? You're one of the most perfect boys, you were the most loved guy in our grade, how could you ever think I wouldn't start liking you? I knew the real you, I was your friend. Shoto rubbed his sleeves together. Everyone thought I was perfect, that I had no flaws and that anyone who had their feelings accepted from me would be the most lucky person alive. He turned his head so he was now staring at Hanta, who stared back with no hesitation. That's how I thought about you. To me, compared to you, I was nothing. You really thought that? I still do. Shoto closed his eyes just as Hanta turned bright red and looked away. They stood in silence, the music in the back being the only sign to Shoto that this wasn't a figment of his imagination or a dream of sorts. Did you, Shoto started, did you date anyone? Yes, Hanta said. She was a cool girl, nice and pretty, and I thought I loved her. It didn't last too long. I wasn't confident in myself enough for her, and she wanted someone people were jealous of. Eventually, she decided she wanted someone better. Someone who wasn't me. Shoto shifted. To him, the idea that someone would not be absolutely thankful to have Hanta love them was impossible. How long ago was this? It was last year. I'm over her, but I'm not exactly done with the feelings she left behind. I feel like I don't deserve anyone, especially anyone like you, Shoto. I just feel like I'm not worth anyone or anything. Shoto didn't move from the sink, but he let his posture move to something more comfortable. I know it won't mean too much to you coming from me considering how long it's been, but to me, you've always been one of the greatest people out there. You're really nice to everyone, so understanding, and you have really funny jokes but can respect people's boundaries. You didn't pry for any information about my scar, and when I told you, you held me and told me I wasn't a monster, that I was still Shoto. Shoto closed his eyes as he began to cry. Hanta came closer, reaching out to touch Shoto but deciding not to. To me, you're what everyone thought I was, perfect. Shoto inhaled through his nose. Hanta walked in front of him, standing over him as they stared at one another. As they breathed, their chests barely grazed. Hanta lifted his hands, staring into Shoto's eyes as he moved to hold his face. Keith and I. Please. Shoto leaned his left side into Hanta's hands. He didn't flinch or stiffen as Hanta ran his thumb over the rough skin of Shoto's burn. He closed his eyes and inhaled Hanta's scent, tangerine with laundry detergent. Shoto gasped as Hanta moved his hands down to his hips, and he picked him up without a single moment of hesitation. He sat on the edge of the sink, now to the level of Ciro's chin. Their foreheads were pressed against each other and their breath was mixing. Shoto liked his lips, surprised they weren't horribly chapped. Hanta held Shoto like he was fragile china, something that could break if he held him too hard, but Shoto didn't mind. He found that the beating in his chest simply quickened when he realized that. Your heart's beating really fast, Hanta breathed. Shoto blushed. Is yours not? Hanta grabbed Shoto's hand, which made the beating grow quicker, and placed it against his chest. Shoto closed his eyes and his lips fell slightly apart. Hanta's heart was beating just as fast as his. Shoto. Yes. Can I kiss you? Yes. It started as a simple peck. Then one peck turned into 3, then 8, then multiple until the individual kisses turned into one kiss mixed with heavy, surprised breaths. Shoto's back arched as large fingers tucked underneath his shirt and held his skin. A tongue pressed against Shoto's lips, and he was reminded of an old feeling from high school. When Inesa would hold him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered, how his large hands would hold his much smaller body and fill his chest with an unbothered warmth. Shoto opened his mouth for Hanta, quickly chasing his fingers through his black hair as a groan throttled itself out. The warmth that Shoto had killed the day Inesa told him they couldn't work anymore returned like a fiery explosion, stronger and hotter than ever before. Open-mouthed kisses left Shoto staring at the lightly blinking light of the bar bathroom. Hanta's hands had moved from Shoto's waist up his back, fingers tracing circular patterns around his spine, and Shoto was reminded of the final touch Inesa left on Shoto's back as he told him they couldn't be together because you're still holding on to someone. Hanta, bye. Both men froze. Finally, after 10 minutes, the aggressive knocks on the door started. Against his skin, Shoto felt Hanta laughing weakly. As the knocking grew louder, Shoto and Hanta snickered. What they were laughing at, Shoto didn't know. What he did know was that he wasn't going to let go of Hanta's hand. What he did know was that he wasn't going to stop Hanta from leading him out the bar with nothing but a wave to Tsu and Ochako. What he did know was that he wasn't going to walk away from Hanta as he unlocked the front door to his apartment. What he did know was that he wasn't going to forget the feeling of Hanta's bed beneath him. What Shoto did know was he was going to remember every outline of Siro's body, the way his fingers felt against his skin, how the warmth he had forgotten to feel burst with life every time Hanta kissed his body. God, how could he? Shoto ran a delicate touch over the dark purple mark on his fairly pale skin. He inhaled through his nose, bruised and marked shoulders rising before collapsing. The bathroom light made the marks darker, Shoto hoped. Out of the corner of his eye, Shoto spotted Hanta sitting on the bathtub edge with a smirk. You left too many, Shoto mumbled, turning around and approaching the smiling man, and it's too warm for turtlenecks. What should I say to Izuku? Or Tenya? Or Hitoshi? Hanta quirked a brow. Do you not want them to know? Do they know how much you like me? There was a teasing tone, but Shoto could hear the underlying insecurity in Hanta's words. That's not it. Shoto smiled as Hanta pulled him close by the hips, pressing them together so Shoto was looking directly down at Hanta, who was smiling like a lovesick puppy. They know about you, but they don't know about you. It was vague as hell, but Hanta seemed to understand. I'll tell them soon. I'm sure Tsu and Ochako know. We weren't exactly subtle last night. Hanta shrugged, kissing Shoto's chest a few times before sighing. Are you actually mad about the marks? Just a little, Shoto admitted, backing up but taking Hanta with him. The two walked out of the bathroom, Hanta's arm wrapped comfortably but tightly around Shoto's waist as the two males returned to Hanta's room. The bed was a disaster from last night, clothes discarded on the floor in a careless manner, and Shoto's phone lay on the bedside table, unopened since he woke up a few minutes ago. I wonder if they're mad. Hanta flopped onto the bed, watching with half-opened eyes as Shoto grabbed his phone. Tenya Blueheart. Are you coming home soon? It is fairly late and Shoto has a lecture soon. Shoto was grateful for the unintentional reminder from Tenya, and the fact it was 5 in the morning, meaning Shoto could get dressed, catch the train, maybe grab a coffee, and still be early for his lecture. Ochako revolving hearts. Tsu and I are gonna stay out for a while longer. Shoto got tired, but he didn't want to head home alone, so Siro took him over to his apartment for some drinks and to talk a bit. Izuku Whiteheart. I thought I heard them laughing a few minutes ago. Shoto's ears burned red. Had Izuku decided to take a look, he would have gotten a front-row viewing of Hanta tugging Shoto into the apartment, whispering some less-than-appropriate things to him as he did so. Ochako revolving hearts. He'll probably stay the night. Tsu and I are gonna turn our phones off, locations will stay on, though. Tenya Blueheart. Have fun but stay safe. Ochako revolving hearts. Sir. A little surprised it was so easy, Shoto turned off his phone and sat down on the bed, quickly falling back into Hanta's chest. Wordlessly, and almost instinctively, Hanta ran his fingers through Shoto's hair, occasionally brushing his thumb against his scar. Every time Hanta took the time for the small action, Shoto was reminded of the night before. Shoto stumbled forward into the dark room, kicking his shoes and breathes off at the closed door before pulling away from Hanta's lips so he could pull off his shirt, Shoto following the action seconds after. Hanta quickly reached for Shoto's face and in the process, held his scar. Shoto froze, an action that didn't go unnoticed by Hanta. Do you want to stop? Quickly Shoto shook his head. No. My scar. Hanta leaned in close, eyes focused on the red marking on Shoto's face. They were both tense but neither pulled away. Hanta finally moved. He caressed Shoto's scar, stopping halfway through when Shoto released a shaky breath. You're perfect, Hanta whispered, capturing Shoto's lips in a soft kiss. Absolutely perfect. Shoto felt like putty in Hanta's arms, knee-weak as he allowed himself to fall back onto the bed, his body slightly sinking into the mattress. Shoto smiled lightly and looked up at Hanta. I have class, he whispered softly, but I'm not working almost all week. That's nice. I have class too, and I don't start working until around 7. Shoto hummed in annoyance when Hanta sat up, grabbing his phone to check the time and his other notifications. Laughing at Shoto, Hanta kissed his temple. We should get moving. If we leave now, we can get coffee. Shoto blinked slowly and stared at the ceiling. After letting out a low groan, he nodded and sat up, laughing lightly as Hanta rolled out from underneath him, nearly shoving him off the bed. It's okay if I wear this? For the 10th time today, yes. Hanta laughed, handing Shoto his iced coffee and kissing his cheek. Besides, you look good in my clothes. Shoto smiled as Hanta held his waist, thumbs ducking under the hoodie's hem to rub his waist. Shoto's clothes from the previous night, while stylish, were not the most comfortable. Since Shoto would be spending pretty much the entire day at the university, Hanta offered Shoto some of his own clothes. 2 good things came out of this. 1, Hanta's clothes were about 3 sizes too big on Shoto, so he was swamped in the comfortable fabric, and 2, when Hanta saw Shoto covered in his clothing, his immediate reaction was to say, I get it now, when dudes go crazy for their girlfriends wearing their clothes. Brightened Shoto's already wonderful morning. He and Hanta stood in front of the college's Starbucks, sipping their drinks as they watched people pass by. Occasionally, a student would recognize Hanta and tell him how good his band was, to which Hanta would smile kindly and thank them. Shoto found it cute, the smile that would break out and the pink hue Hanta's ears turned from the compliment. Once Hanta finished his drink, he and Shoto started walking towards the main campus, where they would go their separate ways since they had literally no classes together. It was a little disheartening, but Shoto constantly reminded himself that they would get to spend lunch together along with 3 hours before Hanta had to go to work. Text me the room number and I'll pick you up, Hanta said after Shoto reminded him he promised to treat him to lunch. I have to go, the earlier I am the more I get away with not paying attention. Shoto accepted the hug from Hanta with a bright smile, though it was a little embarrassing that he had to stand on his toes to rest his head on Hanta's shoulder. Bye, I see you. If this were a cheesy animated movie, the stick of hair on Shoto's hair would be shaped like a heart, because Hanta was kissing Shoto in the softest way, a hand holding his face like he was a breakable doll. He pulled away, smiling softly and running off, leaving Shoto holding his lips, which were in a permanent, love-struck smile. Holy shit! School was kicking Hanta's butt. Don't get it twisted, he's a relatively good student. He's not perfect, definitely isn't in any running for top of the class, but he's not failing any classes and is guaranteed to move on to his next year at the university. Besides, all students, even grade A ones, have it rough sometimes. Hanta has had days where he crashes right after a test, days he didn't get sleep because he had to finish that one specific paper for that one specific strict teacher. He's a college student, after all. Unfortunately, while this day had started out amazing, it got pretty shitty the second Hanta parted ways with Shoto. He was nearly late, meaning he had to take a seat no one wanted in a row that guaranteed he would get called on, even if he didn't want to be. His professor was sick, which would be fine if this wasn't one of Hanta's favorite classes because the professor was really fun. The sub was dry and strict, he brought down the entire vibe of the class. Every class after that was just more of a drag, and the rush from last night had finally vanished, leaving Hanta's body sore and head aching. Lunch could not come sooner. Ag bro. Hey, Hanta, I'm the only one home right now, so I'm just double-checking. The soundproof panels are coming today, right? Hanta had almost forgotten about the panels. They kinda seemed useless now, seeing as everyone was on good terms now and he had finally beaten the risk of noise complaints into everyone's heads. But then again, Katsuki was having a pretty hard time keeping his cool these days. Hanta. Yeah, they are. Don't worry about installing them, I can do it myself. Hey, I'm actually in class right now, and I have plans for lunch, so I gotta let you go, dude. Ag bro. Got it bro. Can always count on you. Have fun with Shoto. Hanta almost choked and coughed loudly into the semi-silent lecture hall. How did Ijiro know he was gonna be with Shoto? Sure, he knew Hanta was into Shoto, and there was no doubt Ejiro caught the two of them leaving the bar together, but he couldn't know more than that. He couldn't know about the bar bathroom, or about what he and Shoto did back at the apartment. They all crashed at Desudo. Shimura made sure Hanta knew that. So how? Blinking a couple of times, Hanta's thoughts shifted. What does it matter? Sure, Shoto's friends were totally aware of what was up, but his friends were. His friends were literally the reason Hanta woke up with Shoto and Todoroki in his bed, smiling softly at him with those appealing, heterochromatic eyes. Hanta had to bite his tongue to keep his mind on track. It didn't matter, his friends didn't care. Katsuki and Ejiro had been dating since high school. Kyoka gushed about her crush almost every day, and though he might not be saying anything, Hanta knew Denki and Shinso had something. Smiling now that the panic was gone, Hanta texted Ejiro back. Hanta. Oh well, thanks. This is the most romantic thing someone has ever done for me. Shoto raised an eyebrow. Hanta, this is McDonald's. There is literally nothing romantic about greasy fries and mediocre burgers. Hanta sighed dreamily, throwing his body into Shoto and kissing his temple. But it's McDonald's that you bought for me. You, my appealing boyfriend who could probably buy the finest of foods, bought me some of the finest delicacies in the world. Shoto, though blank-faced, was pink as he handed Hanta the brown bag. Boyfriend, Shoto whispered, just quiet enough that Hanta could have missed it if he wasn't literally holding Shoto. With red ears, Hanta asked, too soon? Shoto was quick to shake his head, standing on his toes to kiss Hanta's lips softly. Not at all, I just haven't heard that word in a while, I like it. Hanta hummed against Shoto's lips, pulling him in for another, longer kiss. He nearly dropped the bag of food when he instinctively went to hold Shoto's face, but thank God for Shoto's reflexes, because when Hanta dropped the blessed meal, Shoto caught it instantly. Hanta and Shoto stared at the bag that was now in Shoto's hand. Hanta broke by laughing, pressing his face into Shoto's surprisingly soft hair. Best boyfriend ever. You're dramatic, Shoto whispered, slipping from Hanta's hold and grabbing his hand to lead him to a nearby bench. They sat down, quickly getting comfortable. Shoto sat with his back to Hanta, leaning against him as Hanta strung an arm around him, using his other arm to open the burger Shoto bought him. Ejiro texted me. Hanta paused his eating. He said the noise-canceling panels would be coming today, and that you told him you'd install them. Yeah, Hanta mumbled, staring at the burger in his hands. Shoto was right, these burgers were mediocre, but food was food, demon it. I did, he also told me to have fun with you for lunch, so that's that. Shoto hummed and Hanta was happy that he didn't have a bad reaction to knowing Ejiro was well aware of their relationship. Hanta didn't know what he expected. Shoto, at heart, was a relaxed guy. You seem tired, Shoto mumbled, leaning down just a bit so his feet were hanging off the bench. Are you okay? Hanta nodded. Yeah, my classes have been really slow today. He pulled at the sweater on Shoto and chuckled when the smaller boy slapped his hand down to cover the various red and purple marks on the muscle between his neck and shoulder. You're so pretty. The red on Shoto's ears moved to his face and he pulled at the collar of the sweater to cover the bottom half of his face. It was so childishly adorable that Hanta dropped his half-eaten burger into the McDonald's bag and leaned down, kissing the fabric over Shoto's lips. Wait, Shoto mumbled like a child, dropping the collar to expose his lips. Do it again. I'm eating, Hanta teased, popping a handful of fries into his mouth. Shoto tugged at Hanta's shirt, which made him laugh and his heart pound. "Kiss me, Diminu." Hanta gave in pretty quickly. Shoto was amazingly adorable, and seeing him act needy just made him cuter. Not to mention, he had brought Hanta food in his time of need. How could he not pay him back? Katsuki used to hate being without Ejiro. I mean, he didn't like not having Ejiro at his side, but when the two were in high school, newly dating and practically stuck at the hip, he often found himself reverting back to what he was before Ejiro. A pissy beach who growled lowly at anyone who got close to him. Now, as he is older with some of the best friends the world could offer and had the best boyfriend in the world, Katsuki tolerates these lunches with Denki and Mina. Usually, the whole group would have lunch together, but as Kyoka started getting closer to her crush, a tall girl named Yaoyorozu, and Hanta's attention was taken by Todoroki, the group went down to the remaining four, and Ejiro didn't typically have classes the same days like everyone else. And then Tokoyami told me we needed to return the panda to the zoo, and while I agreed, we were in too deep. Then, and I swear to all the gods, the brakes went out. Katsuki shoved his elbow into Denki's side as his voice grew too loud for passerbyers to ignore. Denki simply rubbed his side lightly, apologized quickly, then returned to telling his outlandish story in a quieter tone, though Mina and Katsuki had heard this story many times before. Who the hell could forget Denki Kaminari's disaster of an 18th birthday? "Where's Hanta?" Mina asked as Denki continued his story, though he didn't seem annoyed with Mina for talking over him. As I said, she and Katsuki had not only heard this story many times, but they experienced the chaos that was the 168 texts and 89 voicemails from Denki. I figured he'd at least drop by to say hi. Katsuki grumbled, continuing to scroll through his countless Twitter notifications. He's with half and half. I saw them together, walking to a bench with McDonald's. "McDonald's?" Denki asked, sounding almost offended. "Hanta never buys me McDonald's." Katsuki made a face. "Good, because you have horrible taste. Chicken and pickles are not horrible." Mina and Katsuki spoke at the same time. "Yes, it is." Besides, Katsuki turned off his phone and looked at nothing in particular. "I think Todoroki bought it for him. He was holding the bag after all. I think it might have been a date." Denki mouthed, "A date?" before he crossed his arms and said, completely dead serious, "The rumor come out. Does Hantashiro is gay?" Without hesitation, Katsuki snapped, "Get f'd, dunce face." "Tuya." Shoto cheered like a young boy upon seeing his older brother. Throwing himself from the telephone pole, he leaned against to hug the much taller man. Tuya returned the hug, rubbing Shoto's back lightly. When the two pulled apart, Shoto looked his brother up and down. "You look like sheet." Tuya chuckled as he stroked the skin of his jaw. When Tuya had gone missing, a lot of people, including Shoto's own family, thought him dead, and they kept that belief for a while. Eventually, a criminal by the name of Dabi started surfacing. He didn't have any serious crimes against him, just some vandalism, and was a criminal by association. Dabi was weird. He always addressed people by their full names, and when he ran into Enji, Shoto's father, things got even weirder. Dabi had a lot of similarities to the missing Tuya Todoroki, and after a year of investigation, he was revealed to be just that. After Dabi was arrested, he was given a little bit of a weaker punishment thanks to his fairly ill body, his father, and the fact the only crimes against him were breaking a window and spray painting a couple of walls. With prison over, Dabi Naoya was admitted to a mental hospital for intense mental evaluation along with surgery to try and heal the horrible purple patches covering his body. Months of therapy and surgeries left Tuya happier, with a healthier body, and the purple patches of his skin were gone, leaving a small pink tint to his fairly pale skin. Tuya found a job, established a friendship and eventual relationship with Tenko, and basically revamped his life. Shoto was proud of Tuya and was happy that he could finally have a relationship with his eldest brother, not to mention Natsuo and Fuyumi seemed to brighten, a weight lifted from their shoulders. Tuya had dyed his hair black when he was Dabi and was just starting to let his roots grow back, leaving his hair to be white and black gradient. Shoto always wondered if the small red streaks would return or if Tuya would always live his life looking like a sickly, overly stressed out boy. Shoto remembered Tenko's reaction the first time Tuya let his roots show. Your hair better not look like that at the wedding, he had mumbled as he ran his fingers through Tuya's hair. Better than I used to, Tuya defended, and Shoto wasn't exactly in a place to argue with him. Tenko's back home taking care of keeping Dad from a 60-mile radius of the wedding, so here I am, checking on my best groomsman. Natsuo is your best man, Shoto reminded Tuya as the two walked down the street, but thanks. Tuya shrugged. Actually, Fuyumi will be my number one. Shoto hummed. It did make sense, Tuya and Fuyumi were the oldest of the family, and before Tuya went MIA, he was always at her side, helping Fuyumi raise him and Natsuo. Natsuo and Tuya were close, but he and Fuyumi were best friends. Not to mention, it would fit with Tenko having Himiko as his best woman. Lost in thought, Shoto barely noticed Tuya tugging at the sleeve of his sweater. Is this new? Are you trying something new? 'Cause this is like 3 sizes too big for your model waist. Shoto swatted Tuya's hand away, rubbing his finger over the yellow material of the sweater Hanta gave him. And those sweats look like you pulled the strings to their limits. The black Adidas sweats were really big, and Shoto did pull the strings as far as they could go so he wasn't constantly pulling his breeds up. They're not my clothes, Shoto mumbled, tugging Tuya away from a crowd of girls so they could cross the street. Are they Midoriya's? They seem bright enough and he is really buff, so it'd make sense for them to be too big. Ida's? He's buff too. Maybe Shinso. They're my boyfriends. Tuya was quick to react, throwing his entire weight and body at Shoto's back and throwing his arms around his neck to keep him in place. Boyfriend? My sweet, innocent, socially awkward brother has a boyfriend. How long? Shoto grumbled, a light pink flush dusting his face at Tuya's public antics. Just a day, but I really like him. A lot. I'm so proud. Tuya faked a sniffle, though, knowing how crazy his brother can be, Shoto wouldn't be surprised if it was a real sniffle and Tuya was damn near to tears. Absolutely amazed. I have to meet him. Shoto didn't consider it for long. Tuya was his brother. Fine, but only if Natsuo and Fuyumi come. I know how you get. Can I bring Tenko? Tuya asked. He had moved to stand at Shoto's side, using their height difference to easily drape his arm around the shorter male. He's just as protective as me, so you has to meet this. They've already met. And Tenko already knows we're dating. What? Tuya grabbed Shoto's shoulders, pulling him backward, once again, in the middle of the street in front of countless people. Why was the city so busy even at night? Why do you people insist on leaving me out of things? What did I ever do to you? Shoto smiled weakly. Do you want a list? I'm so betrayed. Whatever, drama queen. Shoto used his above-average upper body strength to tug Tuya along. Let's get some soba. Hanta smiled sweetly at the middle-aged woman, sliding her drink across the bar to her. She thanked him, exchanging the drink for her bill along with a 1,053 yen and 65 cents $10 tucked underneath the small black folder. Hanta thanked the woman for the tip, smiled at her husband, and waved to them as they walked to the table in the pit, where the entertainment for the night stood on the stage. You're a natural as always, Hanta's boss, Hakamata, said. Hakamata was a man in his mid-30s who liked wearing denim and styling everyone's hair like his, which made him look like a cheesy member of a boy band. Other than his constant need for perfection, Hakamata was fairly nice, and he paid his employees well, especially if they proved to be hard workers. Your hair is in perfect condition. Thank you, sir. His hair wasn't anything special, just a low-hanging ponytail. If you asked his friends, his hair looked like that a lot. When he was cooking, doing laundry, sleeping, setting up the instruments for a gig, pretty much every time he had a hair tie on him. But my hair looks like this a lot. There is something new about it, something fresh like a young woman has run her fingers through it. Hanta wanted to laugh, but he didn't. He would be telling Shoto about this, about how his boss had called him a young woman. Yeah, he smothered his laugh, something like that. Hakamata smirked. You have found a delicate flower to make your own. Hanta hummed, his laughter practically strangling him. I remember my first love. She was a flame I have never forgotten. It was pretty hard to believe Hakamata was heterosexual, but the way he flirted with pretty much any woman who gave him attention proved just that. What is her name? His last name is Todoroki. A beat of silence hung over the two. Hanta coughed awkwardly as he reached for a wet glass, distracting himself by wiping it down. Hakamata opened his mouth to speak, closed it, opened it, then moved to stand on the other side of the bar, forcing Hanta to look at him. Does he look like a young woman? Hanta threw his head back and howled with laughter, but it mixed well with the laughter of the customers in the pit. Shudo wasn't home alone often. Usually, if Izuku and Tenya were out with Ochako and Tsu, Hitoshi would be at the apartment, working on some art or binge-watching alien shows. However, recently Shoto, and pretty much everyone else, was noticing how absent Hitoshi was from the apartment these days. He would either come home very late or really early in the morning with messy hair and a small bow in his back, but other times he would come home beaming, dressed, not formally, but definitely stylishly. Hitoshi wasn't slick, they all knew he was seeing someone, they just didn't know who. Then they met their neighbors and Denki Kaminari, and everything fell together. While none of them knew why Hitoshi didn't just tell them he and Kaminari were a thing, they didn't pry, they didn't even hint to knowing what was up. In Tsu's own brutally honest words, as long as they aren't in my bed or on the couch, I couldn't care less if they tell us. Though he didn't agree with the choice of words, Tenya agreed with the sentiment, as did Izuku, Ochako, and Shoto. Izuku was out with Ochako, hanging out with some less mutual friends, while Tenya was at the library. He had texted the group hours before, warning them that he would be at the library until he had to leave, and he would probably take a detour at his other friend's place, so they shouldn't stay up for them. Tsu didn't usually tell the group what she was doing, just kind of headed out with a wave telling the others she was going out and that her location would be on. These nights were usually taken up by Shoto and Hitoshi hanging out in either the living room or one of their rooms, sitting quietly as they did their own things. However, thanks to Kaminari and his healthy relationship with Hitoshi, Shoto was home alone on the couch. He didn't mind and kind of enjoyed the total silence, especially the one coming from next door. He was sprawled out on the couch without a lick of shame, dressed in a pastel pink hoodie CRP top Ochako bought him for his birthday and black leggings with a floral pattern on the sides. They were the same leggings Shoto wanted to ask Ishido about when the two first met. On the TV, Fairy Tail was playing, but Shoto wasn't paying too much attention. He had watched the show at least 5 times already, so it was more background noise for him. He was on his phone, mindlessly scrolling through his social media. As he was scrolling, Shoto accidentally clicked a tag. He was thrown into a stream of fan art, capital letters, and bolded text. As he was about to click off, Shoto realized the tag he landed on was that of Hanta's band. Now curious, Shoto started scrolling through. He wasn't shameless in liking fan art, he even retweeted some, which would no doubt come back to bite him in the butt when the Baku squad checked out their feeds and saw the fan art of themselves retweeted by their own neighbor and friend. None of the art he retweeted had text along with them, so they couldn't be too mad. Shoto continued like this for a few more minutes, snorting at the fanfiction written about Katsuki and Ejiro and continuing to reblog fan art, when his phone buzzed with a call. It was Hanta. Joy instantly bloomed in Shoto's chest since he was sure he wouldn't be able to talk to Hanta for the rest of the night because of his job. He answered the call with a happy hum. I got off early because some dude threw his drink at me, so that's great. Hanta instantly started. He sounded amused and annoyed at the same time, and Shoto could already imagine the big smirk on Hanta's face and how his eyes would be tugged in the corners to show that while it was genuine, it was a struggle to keep it up. Anyway, what are you up to? Besides watching Fairy Tail and going through Twitter? Nothing. How about the others? Izuku and Ochako seeing some friends, Tenya is studying The Maniac and is gonna stay with his friends, Tsu has abandoned ship and probably won't be home until 2 a.m. because that's always when she gets home when she just leaves and tells us to check her location, and Hitoshi is definitely out with Kaminari. Hanta laughed. Definitely, he parroted. What about you? I wasn't even planning on being home until 1 a.m. Dude, I have no plans. The others? Shoto was moving around a lot. He had moved from his sprawled-out position to walking around the apartment with large, exaggerated steps and waving out the arm not occupied with the phone. Date night for Katsuki and Ejiro, which means they're gonna take advantage of Katsuki's thick wallet to buy expensive food then in an expensive hotel bed. Shudo laughed, now in the kitchen and leaning against the counter. And Mina is probably out with her coworkers. Her shift ended hours ago and they all like hanging around until their boss kicks them out. Kyoka finally got a date with her crush, so her night is pretty much booked, and we all know what Denki is up to. Shoto hummed. He was sitting on the counter, legs crossed and back pressed to the wall. Oh, Hanta suddenly laughed. Do you want to hear something funny? Shoto hummed. Always. My boss was asking about you, because I apparently looked like I had found love, and he asked if you were a young woman. Shoto scrunched up his face despite the fact Hanta couldn't see. I told him you were a dude, I promise, but then he looked me dead in the eyes and asked if you looked like a young woman. I just laughed and promised myself I would tell you about this. Shoto breathed through his nose. I am not a young woman. Hanta hummed. I'm aware. I guess the way I'm dressed right now doesn't really help that case. There was a long pause, and Shudo could hear Hanta breathing slowly. What are you wearing? The mood quickly changed. Shoto let out a breathy laugh. He jumped from the counter and started walking to the couch. A pink CRP top and floral leggings, pretty girly, huh? Sounds cute, Hanta mumbled, the noise of the street dying as Hanta walked through some doors, no doubt the entrance of the apartment complex. Do you usually dress like that? Only when I'm home. The clothes are really soft, really loose too. Maybe it was the suddenness of it or maybe it was the innocent tone Shoto used, but Hanta choked and Shoto covered his mouth to hide his snicker. You can't just, Shoto Todoroki, are you seducing me? Shoto hesitated, listening to Hanta's frantic feet tapping and the sound of the elevator moving up. Maybe. Fook, Hanta whispered, no doubt pinching the bridge of his nose. Is the front door unlocked? Shoto jumped from the couch, quickly unlocking the door. He smiled as he pressed his back against the wood slab. Yes. Are you going to let me in? Shoto nibbled at his lip. Yes. Good, because I'm down the hall. I'll see you in 10 seconds. The phone beeped, signaling Shoto that Hanta hung up. He pushed off the door, sitting down on one of the kitchen chairs as he stared at the front door. Seconds later, the doorknob turned and the door opened. Shoto was in no way prepared to see Hanta dressed the way he was. His hair was in the same low ponytail it was in when they reunited. Shoto was reminded how it was so unfair how long it had been since he'd seen Hanta with that hairstyle, and he was dressed in a white dress shirt. The shirt was unbuttoned almost completely, tucked into the form-fitting black breathes Hanta wore. A black vest and tie were in his hands, but the second he made eye contact with Shoto, he dropped the articles of clothing. Shoto wasn't the only one with a surprised reaction. Hanta's face was on fire from simply staring at Shoto, and he was quick to kick the door shut, locking the door behind him. He picked Shoto up from the chair, leaving it out as he pressed Shoto's smaller frame against him. Shoto wrapped his legs around Hanta's waist, smiling against his lips as they threw themselves into a kiss that was less than soft, nothing compared to the many kisses the two had shared in the morning or at the university campus. This kiss was quick to include tongue and biting. Shoto let Hanta take the lead. He didn't fight back or try to be the DM1. He simply kept his arms wrapped around Hanta's neck and ummed against Hanta's needy lips. Hanta pulled from Shoto, breathing heavily against the skin between his neck and jaw. Which room is yours? Shoto could barely speak. His head was light and his body was filled with a brilliant warmth. Down the hall, 2 doors, take a left. Shoto breathed out a weak laugh as Hanta made a beeline for the bedroom. Good boy. Hanta hissed in. You're killing me, Shoto, killing me. I know. You could help me, Hanta said. I could, Shoto agreed, but I don't wanna. Hanta exhaled a laugh, pressing his head against the new cushiony wall. God, you're such a brat. Why do I tolerate you? Because I'm pretty, Shoto joked, and Hanta chuckled, leaning down to press a soft kiss to Shoto's waiting lips. It was very early, around 5:09 a.m., and Hanta and Shoto woke up with aching hips, love bites all over their bodies, and the energy drained from them. Despite Hanta's longing to just pull the blanket over his and Shoto's heads, he remembered he promised his friends the panels would be installed by the time they came home, so Hanta rounded up Shoto and the two started installing the panels. Or, at least Hanta started installing the panels, Shoto simply sat on the ground, handing Hanta nails every once in a while as he talked about his day yesterday. And because you like me? Hanta nodded. You make a valid argument, dear. Sighing, Hanta stepped back to admire his work. The wall between his and Shoto's apartments was covered in black cushion panels while the living room floor had mats similar to ones you'd find at a dojo. Shoto had commented that the panels were as soft as the floor itself, and Hanta reminded him they were supposed to cancel noise, not help his but feel better. Satisfied with his work, Hanta pulled Shoto to his feet, leading the shorter male into the kitchen. The two stood in silence as Hanta prepared some coffee. He had suggested tea, but Shoto's distant gaze at the tea kettle told Hanta there were still some lingering feelings about the idea. Hanta didn't mind. He preferred coffee over tea whenever he woke up early. Shoto, being the spoiled brat he was, sat on the counter next to Hanta. It was silent for a few minutes, even after Hanta finished the 2 mugs and drenched Shoto's coffee in so much cream it might as well have been creamer with touches of coffee. Once again, Hanta didn't mind. There was something domestic about standing in the dimly lit kitchen between Shoto's legs, smiling every time a line of creamer sat on his upper lip, and Hanta liked the feeling. I almost forgot. Shoto finally broke the silence. My older brother Tuya, the one engaged to Tenko, he wants to meet you, and so do my other siblings. I've already met Natsuo and Fuyumi though. Shoto shrugged. It's the thought that counts. I just don't want to sick Tuya on you. He's kinda protective of me, and despite all the surgery and rehab he's gone through, he's still pretty intimidating. Hanta hummed and stole a sip from Shoto's coffee. It was a vast comparison to Hanta's much less sweetened coffee. He liked his lip, instantly destroying the sweet aftertaste from Shoto's coffee. I'm fine with it. I like your family. I think I'm free on Wednesday? Does that work? Tuya is always free. He's a trophy fiancé. Hanta snorted. He believed it. Shimura made bank with his bar. Oh, to be a trophy fiancé, Hanta said with a fake dreamy sigh. A life I could never live. Shoto hummed. I make a lot of money by purely existing, so if you ever need a sugar daddy, I'm always available. Most sugar daddies, and I'm not an expert here, aren't the bottom. Shoto made a face, though Hanta couldn't pick it apart since half his face was covered by the mug he was drinking from. Either way, Hanta felt extremely compelled to lean in and kiss a soft kiss to Shoto's nose. Shoto sighed at the contact. Sugar daddies pay people to get what they want. What I want is someone emotionally available who will give me a kiss when I want a kiss and will be the top I've been missing for years. Hanta set his mug down, leaning into Shoto's body to weakly drape his arms around his smaller frame. Sounds kind of like a boyfriend, not gonna lie. Then I want a boyfriend. You have a boyfriend. Shoto wrapped his legs around Hanta, pulling him closer. Hanta had to bite his lip to keep from swooning when Shoto kissed his neck softly. I'm keeping it, throw away the receipt. Okay. Hanta wished he could have stayed like that for hours, but that wish was thrown off a cliff when the front door burst open. So I'm like 80% sure this kid is either FNG with us or he's genuinely knocked the F out on the floor, and everyone else is running around wondering what the F they're gonna tell the teacher and my bad. Hanta whipped around to make a comment, but it died in his mouth. Denki stood with an awkward smile while Shinso stared at Shoto like a deer in headlights. Hanta looked between the two roommates. Both of them were slack-jawed and looked like they were caught murdering someone. You and Shinso pointed between Hanta and Shoto. Hanta swiftly became aware of the position the two were in and how it could be taken in a less than appropriate way. What? Shoto slapped Hanta's back rapidly. I knew it. I knew they were. Who am I kidding? We all knew. Why didn't you tell us? We all know. All of us. Even Tenya. Shinso blushed and buried his face in Denki's shoulder. I don't know, I was kind of embarrassed about it since I haven't dated anyone in a while, but also, how would you react if I told you I was dating our annoying neighbor? I'm biased now, Shoto announced, shamelessly kissing Hanta's cheek. But I understand where you're coming from. I was still right though. No one was right, we all knew. It wasn't a secret, especially after Saturday. While Shinso's blush deepened, Denki just laughed. I was telling him about that time in gym class when that kid got knocked out, remember? Hanta nodded, untangling himself from Shoto's legs before helping him down from the counter. The two couples flocked to the kitchen table, moving their chairs closer to their significant others as Denki continued his story. Yeah, so anyway, everyone wants to figure out what to do, but I already have a plan. Shoto. Pack it up everyone, we were right. The secret is out. They're homosexuals. Hitoshi Purple Heart. Thanks for exposing me. Tsu Green Heart. How is it exposing when we all knew? By the way, Izuku and Ochako are super hungover. Like, they could make a reboot of the Hangover movies with how hungover they are. It's amazing. Tenya Blueheart. Firstly, congratulations to you, Hitoshi. I am sure you and Kaminari are a wonderful couple. Secondly, Tsuyu, instead of making fun of our friends, how about you treat their hangovers? Tsu Greenheart. Where even are you? I came home at like 2 a.m. and everyone was home but you and Hitoshi, but I knew where Hitoshi was, he was getting DE'd down. Were you getting DE'd down? Shoto snorted aggressively, but the only one to react was Denki, who was not sitting next to Shoto and reading the texts over his shoulder or was in the group chat witnessing the chaos firsthand. Tenya Blueheart. For your information, I was at Yuga's apartment. Tsu Greenheart. Getting DE'd down? Shoto. Seriously Tsu? Tenya Blueheart. Thank you Shoto. Shoto. If Tenya was Ifang Yuga, he'd definitely be the top. Don't be ridiculous. Tenya Blueheart. I've changed my mind. I hate all of you. Hitoshi Purple Heart. Even me? Tenya Blueheart. Debatable. I'll be home in an hour. Shoto. Oh right, I just remembered. I and Hanta are dating. K love you, come home safe Redheart. Tsu Greenheart. What? Tenya Blueheart. Pardon me? Hitoshi Purple Heart. Yeah. Tsu Greenheart. You knew? Hitoshi Purple Heart. I just found out. But at the same time. Seriously? You didn't know? They were as subtle as a bull wearing heels in a China store. Tsu Greenheart. I just wanted to pretend for a second I wasn't the most single beach in the house. Izuku Whiteheart. Correct. Tsu Greenheart. You are still drunk from last night. And you're single. Izuku Whiteheart. But I could get it. I have the face of a bottom but the body of a top. Not my own words. Tenya Blueheart. Will you all go back to bed or focus on something else? Izuku Whiteheart. You got it, Daddy. Tenya Blueheart. Izuku. Please. Hitoshi Purple Heart. Oh, to see without my eyes. And Shoto and I are dating. And so are Denki and Shinso. Rat King. No shit Sherlock. Next you're gonna tell me Frog and Pink Cheeks are in love with each other. Pikachu. Ochako and Tsu are in love? And you disappoint me. How nice is this place? Katsuki asked from the depths of his closet. The group gathered in Katsuki and Ejiro's shared bedroom, Kyoka aggressively filing Hanta's nails while Denki and Ejiro sat on the floor comparing shoes. Hanta had been placed on the edge of the bed, Mina sitting behind him as she texted Uraraka and Tsu for updates on Shoto's side. Wednesday was one of the few weekdays when everyone was free at night, and while Wednesdays were typically spent playing Smash Brothers and playing music, Hanta had plans with the Todoroki family, who insisted they pick the venue and pay for the meal. I know for a fact you don't own anything fancy, Katsuki had snapped when Hanta explained this to the group, so be thankful I'm helping you. Hanta glanced anxiously at the clock. It's like a 5-star restaurant. Can't believe you landed the full package. Hot, cute, funny, considerate, rich, Mina mumbled, her voice only a little jealous. Ochako just told me the place is super fancy. Avoid jeans, sneakers, and short-sleeved button-downs. Instantly, Denki and Ejiro tossed a good half of the shoes aside. Katsuki stepped deeper into the closet. How deep does that thing go? Seconds later, Katsuki popped out with a semi-large box. We just have a lot of clothes. Here. Hanta raised his hands as Katsuki threw the box onto his lap. It's probably not your color, but it's the best we can do. Hanta opened the box and was met with a gorgeous blue suit. Thank you, Katsuki's designer parents. Now, what are you gonna do about his hair? What's wrong with my hair? Everyone raised an eyebrow before looking at one another. All eyes slowly but surely went to Kyoka, who sighed. Hanta, you have a mullet and I think it's about time you did something about it. Swallowing thickly, Hanta ran a hand through his hair. Okay, then what? Mina cracked her knuckles. Get me my clippers and hair gel. Hanta felt naked. Obviously, he wasn't naked, far from it, actually. The suit Katsuki supplied him with was surprisingly snug, and despite his comment, the blue looked nice on him. With a white undershirt and a black floral tie, Hanta looked more formal than he'd ever had in his life. The shoes were a little big, no one could hope to match Ajiro's foot size, but by pulling the laces as far as they could go, the shoes fit fine. Denki was even nice enough to lend Hanta a silver watch that complemented the whole outfit. No, what left Hanta feeling exposed was Mina's work. The shortest Hanta could remember his hair being was when he was 4, and his hair was a shaggy black mess that went to the start of his neck. Ever since he was 6, Hanta let his hair grow to the end of his neck, and by his last year of high school, Hanta decided to let it keep growing until it was a mullet. His hair had never been shorter until now. Mina had no mercy. She grabbed scissors from the kitchen and ruthlessly chopped off Hanta's hair, dropping the long bunch onto the tarped ground. Hanta simply closed his eyes, the only noise being the razor working and Denki's speaker playing the funeral music on repeat. By the end of Mina's massacre, Hanta was left with an undercut all around his head, the only hair left at the top of his head. She had pushed back his bag so his forehead was on display, and with some gel, his hair was parted to one side. It wasn't bad, not in the slightest, but Hanta felt as if Mina had taken all of his clothes and burned them into shorts and CRP tops. Despite his woes, they cleaned him off, put him into the suit, then shoved him out the apartment without his wallet, just his phone and his key to the apartment tucked safely into a pocket inside the suit jacket. He stood outside alone for only 5 minutes, rubbing his newly exposed neck and wondering how Shoto would react to the spontaneous haircut. Would he like it? What if he hated it? Shoto was always so blunt, he wouldn't hesitate to tell Hanta if he looked stupid. The idea of it was enough to leave Hanta chewing at his lip. His nerves were doubled when the apartment door next to him swung open. His breath was instantly taken from him. Shoto wore an amazing gray suit. It was definitely tailored because every aspect of the suit seemed made for him. His hair was styled in a way Hanta had never seen before. The white part parted over the red, covering the majority of it so it looked like he had white hair with red tips. It left the majority of his scar covered, but Hanta could still see his appealing blue eye. Shoto was fixing his sleeves when Hanta cleared his throat. His reaction was nearly a mirror image of Hanta's own. "Your hair," Shoto said weakly, reaching up to hold the newly shaved part of Hanta's head. The touch was different but welcomed, Hanta realized as he leaned into the hold Shoto had on him. Hanta reached out to hold Shoto's waist with a fond smile. "I like it. It's better than that stupid mullet." Hanta frowned. "You didn't like my mullet?" "No one liked your mullet, we just didn't have the heart to tell you." "I hated it the least, you look hot with a ponytail." "I guess that's off the table now." Hanta sighed, arms slipping away from Shoto's waist to instead hold his hand. Shoto tugged Hanta away from the elevator to the stairs. Hanta didn't protest, it was probably better that way, they would get a lot of looks in the elevator thanks to their extremely formal appearance. Besides, the stairs weren't terrible. "You could push the hair back, it's still fairly long," Shoto pointed out, holding Hanta's hand with one hand and easing himself on the railing with the other. "Your hair looks nice this way. Did Ashido do this?" "Yeah, she's always been good with that kind of stuff so I trusted her with it, still feels weird though." The two reached the lobby surprisingly quickly, but Hanta once again didn't mind. Shoto and Hanta waved at the always sweet woman at the front desk before exiting into the surprisingly cool night. Instantly, Hanta was aware of the appealing black car parked on the street. "Shoto," Hanta stared at the car, "did you call a limo?" "I didn't, Fuyumi did." Hanta could only nod as Shoto pulled him into the car. It wasn't too big, enough to fit at least 6 people, with wraparound black leather seats. The window separating the driver and the passengers was closed, but the car moved the second Hanta slammed the door shut. Shoto didn't bother with a seatbelt, he simply leaned into the seat and pulled out his phone, probably to text his siblings. "My siblings are bringing their partners too, so don't feel too awkward, okay?" Hanta, still surprised by the limo, could only nod. You already feel awkward, don't you? The nicest car I've ever been in is Ejiro's family van, so, yeah. Shoto snorted, leaning into Hanta's shoulder. To hell with awkward feelings, Hanta thought as he smiled down at the laughing Shoto. Eating dinner at a five-star restaurant was one thing, eating dinner at a five-star restaurant on the top floor which just so happened to be a balcony was a whole other thing. Hanta knew Shoto and his family were rich, but he hadn't truly grasped how rich they were until now. Forget rich, Shoto was loaded. Fuyumi looked about the same as Hanta had remembered. Her white hair with red highlights was shorter than it was, now a nice bob cut, but she had the same soft face and motherly aura Hanta remembered from middle school. She was wearing a nice blue dress along with a very expensive-looking silver necklace. She had brought her girlfriend Usajiyama, a tall and tan woman with muscles so big Hanta thought she could easily crush a melon with a flex of his biceps. She wore a white dress shirt tucked into black breeds with wide ends and a black jacket that slid off her shoulders. Natsuo had changed the least. Despite the fact his hair was longer, his white hair remained spiky at the top and he was still relatively short compared to his other siblings, but he was broad and muscular and his black suit only showed that off. His boyfriend Takami, a younger-looking guy with shaggy blonde hair and stubble, was scrawnier but taller with a relaxed posture, but his red suit was the most eye-catching of the bunch. The most familiar face of the group was Shimura, who had pulled his light blue hair into a ponytail and wore a simple black suit with gloves, a habit Shimura was working on getting rid of but couldn't seem to shake just yet. At his arm was someone Hanta had never met before. Tuya, Shoto's once missing and presumed dead brother. He wore a dark purple suit and stared at Hanta like he was a suspicious suspect despite Fuyumi welcoming him with a large hug. Either way, Hanta eased when Shimura openly jabbed Tuya in the ribs and snapped, "Stop doing that, he's more of a gentleman than you." Everyone had laughed, even Hanta, and the group sat down for a dinner Hanta could only dream of having. Everyone was drinking wine, laughing with different variations of meals, though most were harboring steaks or ribs. Out of all the couples, Hanta and Shoto were the most obvious. Shoto kept his chair close to Hanta, and they both kept one hand occupied by holding hands over the table, resting them between their plates in the least subtle way as possible. However, Takami had his random bursts of affection for Natsuo in the form of random kisses or lingering side hugs. Tuya and Shimura were seemingly content with occasionally wrapping their pinkies together. "I doubt father is pleased with how we ended up, but what does it matter? I'm a wonderful teacher, Natsuo is the best nurse at his hospital, Shoto loves his major and Tuya, he's alive." While everyone else started laughing, Tuya glared at Fuyumi. "You know I'm right. You may have a job now, but I guarantee the second you and Tenko are sharing a bank account, you'll be at home making dinner and making sure the laundry is done." Shimura didn't confirm or deny these claims, simply raised his eyebrows, and shoved a bite of steak into his mouth to avoid commenting. Usajiyama rubbed Fuyumi's shoulder as she smiled toothily. "We'll celebrate your last day as a man at your wedding." "I'll still be a man after we're married," Tuya sighed, leaning into Shimura. "I'll just be a trophy husband." Shoto and Hanta shared an amused look at the familiar words. "And you'll be too busy taking care of Yumi, she's a total lightweight." Fuyumi didn't deny it. Natsuo nodded his head while Takami chuckled. "What about you, Shiro? Are you a lightweight?" Hanta shook his head. "I don't think so, no. Can confirm, I've seen you down 6 shots and walk away like they were water." Shoto stuck his tongue out when Hanta narrowed his eyes at him. "I only speak the truth, Hanta. Doesn't mean you should expose me to your family, I'm trying to make a good impression, dim Enid." Natsuo laughed. "You can make a better impression at the wedding." "Oh," Hanta laughed nervously, "I wouldn't want to impose on." Shimura waved his hand dismissively. "We're not getting married for another 3 months. If you and Shoto are still dating by then, I don't see a problem with you at the wedding. I'd rather you come than watch Shoto struggle with who he's going to take with him." "I was probably gonna show up alone," Shoto admitted. "I don't like choosing between my friends." Natsuo smirked. "Imagine the look on Dad's face. First he's not even invited to the wedding, but now his entire family is taking their gay lovers to the wedding of his presumed missing son, who is marrying a former criminal who now makes bank through drunk people. Appealing. You're so damn and sadistic, I love it, Takami cooed happily. Hanta laughed with the rest of the table, but he was not unaware of the tight squeeze of his hand or the head leaning into his arm. He looked down and smiled at Shoto, who was smiling softly at his family. I want to see that smile every day, Hanta thought, reaching out to subtly slide Shoto's cheek. Every day. Shoto had been drunk only a handful of times in his life. The first time he got drunk, it was his 18th birthday. Hitoshi had suggested the group celebrate late, and late they did, and somewhere into the celebration alcohol made it into the mix. Shoto didn't get drunk too badly, he could remember most of the night, and his hangover was healed easily with some medicine and water. The second time Shoto got drunk, it was his 20th birthday and Tenko treated him and his group with drinks on the house all night so long as they didn't break anything. That was the drunkest Shoto had ever been and he's still learning new bits and pieces about that night. 2 other times from nights with his friends and the most recent being the Saturday he spent with the Baku squad and his friends at the club. 5 times before and tonight would make it 6. Wine hadn't always been Shoto's favorite. It was dry and most of the wine he tasted had a horrible taste, so he wasn't often drunk on it, but something about sitting with his family and their partners atop a tall building, Hanta pressed close to him, made him forget all about the horrible taste of wine. Thankfully, Shoto wasn't the only one doing hard on the drinks. Takami was never one to hold back with the alcohol, but since Natsuo didn't drink, it was an easy balance. Usajiyama loved her alcohol but wasn't a lightweight in the slightest bit, so she wasn't considered drunk until the very end of the night. Tenko, being the owner of a bar, had plenty of experience with drunkards, so he was pretty much unfazed by Tuya's drunk antics, which included intense flirting and the occasional cry about how much he loved him. Life was going in and out. 1 minute, Shoto was giving long and unnecessarily emotional hugs to his family, but the next he was inside the limo with Hanta against him, kissing the exposed skin of his neck to his jaw. Shoto made a noise. I'm not in that mood right now. Neither am I, Hanta assured. I'm just too drunk to aim for your lips, so I'm doing the best I can. That brought a laugh from Shoto, who turned his head and was instantly met with multiple soft kisses to his lips. Shoto hummed, the taste of wine and the ice cream the two shared mixing surprisingly well. Hanta continued to peck Shoto's lips, occasionally missing just askew and instead kissing the corner of his lips. You a kiss, another kiss, so, a kiss, full kiss, kiss, kiss. Shoto held the hand that now held his face tenderly. So are you. No, I'm not. You are though. Hanta pressed his forehead against Shoto's, smiling brightly and holding eye contact with him. You have pretty eyes, pretty skin, pretty hair, a pretty jaw. Shoto made a high-pitched noise after Hanta grabbed his jaw and gave it a small squeeze and shake, appealing. Shoto pushed Hanta's hands away, instantly lifting himself up and plopping down on his lap. Hanta was quick to wrap his arms around him, pulling him closer and kissing the exposed skin of his neck. Shoto hummed approvingly of the small peppered kisses. You know, years ago, this would have been some outlandish fantasy. This specific scenario, Hanta kissed his earlobe, or just us in general? Us. Shoto sighed happily, comparing his hand size with Hanta as the taller male continued to kiss every inch of exposed kiss. I'm really, really happy with you, Hanta. Hanta's words were messed up against Hanta's skin, but the message was clear. I think I'm in love with you. The words made Shoto melt against Hanta. He threw his head back and slapped his hands onto Hanta's face, instantly pulling him down for an awkward kiss thanks to the angle. After tilting his head just a bit, Hanta fixed the mess and continued to kiss Shoto softly, hands holding his waist tightly to keep him from slipping away. I think I'm in love with you too. The next morning, Hanta and Shoto woke up dressed in fuzzy pajama breathes, shirtless and holding each other tightly. Had it not been for their lack of energy from last night, they probably would have woken up earlier and had time to stare lovingly into one another's eyes, but demon wine and delicious food because instead, the two had to rush into their clothes, scrambling for their phones as they rushed down the stairs to make their typical ways of transportation. Hanta was taking the lead, holding Shoto's hand tightly as they ran through the crowded train station, and Shoto let him lead him, simply letting his legs move to keep up with him. They barely made it through, and if Shoto wasn't so small, he either would have been cut off from Hanta or crushed by the closing doors. The train moved instantly, giving the two no time to grab onto handles or find empty seats. Thankfully, Hanta was one of the tallest people in the train, so he quickly found a grip on a railing above. As for Shoto, he crashed into Hanta, instinctively wrapping himself around his boyfriend. They breathed heavily in unison, ignoring any stares they received from people. Shoto was sure he would knock out during his first class, which was fine, he was passing it with ease. As Hanta balanced himself out, holding the railing with one hand and pressing his other to Shoto's back, Shoto thought about what he would do for lunch. Most likely he would spend it with his friends since most of his time has been occupied by Hanta, and that wasn't fair to them. Maybe he would take a small detour to grab Hanta something, but that was a small idea. Hanta had told Shoto sometime around their light touches in the limo that his roommates wanted to have lunch together so they could talk about the band. Shoto, drunk and tired and still fairly distracted by Hanta's use of the word love, had whispered, "What band?" It made Hanta laugh, so Shoto ignored his light embarrassment. "Are you awake?" Hanta suddenly asked. Shoto slowly nodded his head, face moving the fabric of Hanta's college hoodie. It occurred to Shoto just then that he didn't have a clue what he was wearing. Whatever it was, the clothes belonged to Hanta, given by how baggy they were against his skin. "If you fall asleep during class, ask a classmate to wake you up. I don't want you to miss any more classes." Shoto smiled. He loved Hanta's random bursts of consideracy. "Okay, I will. Text me after lunch, yeah?" "Yeah." The arm around him tightened, pulling him closer if that was possible. Shoto turned his face so it was completely buried in the hoodie. It smelt faintly of laundry detergent, but mostly the citrusy scent that Hanta filled his room with. "You're working today, right?" Shoto yawned. "Unfortunately." Hanta hummed in amusement. "I'll text you before I start work, and maybe if I get the chance during, we're having a comedian over, so I bet something will happen, probably a drunk dude getting offended by the jokes or something." "Does that happen often?" "Yes," Hanta said, and Shoto laughed sleepily. He yawned once again. "You can fall asleep, we have another 15 minutes, I'll wake you up, I promise." Shoto nodded extra slowly. "Thank you." "Ichimich. Ovyu." Hanta held Shoto tighter, and Shoto didn't have to open his eyes to know Hanta had flushed all the way over. "Ovyu too, Shoto." "You said you love him?" "To be completely honest, I said Ov instead." "I think we should focus on the fact he said it back," Izuku pointed out, taking a long sip of his lemonade. Shoto had gone through with his plan to get Hanta something and stopped at Starbucks for himself, Hanta, and his friends. He could afford it. After dropping off a strong black coffee for Hanta, Shoto met his friends at a balcony dining area that the group always arrived at first thanks to Tenya's amazing speed. "You guys have only been dating for a few days, though, so, shame on you." Sue, who was leaning over the table to not so subtly place a handful of fries on Ochako's page, shrugged. "But they've liked one another for years, they probably would have started dating in middle school if they weren't such pussies." Though Shoto wanted to argue, he knew he was a PP for not acting on his feelings for Hanta, and they say if you have a crush for more than 4 months, it's love. "I think it's fine." "I agree," Tenya announced, waving his hands as he always did, which meant Shoto had to duck his head to avoid getting a smack in the face and having the skin in his nose rip. True story, second year of high school, stitches were involved. "If Shoto is happy, then I think we should support them." Izuku pouted but nodded his head lightly in agreement. "You're right. I'm wrong. You all are happy?" "Yes," everyone said happily. Ochako swallowed a handful of chips with a smile. "You and Siro are really cute, almost like a cheesy romance movie." Shoto smiled slightly at the compliment. Ochako was always his #1 supporter when it came to his love life. She was there when he developed a crush on a student from a different school. She helped him get the courage to ask him on a date. She listened whenever Shoto gushed about their dates or how nice his boyfriend was, and she was there to hold him when they broke up. "I can't wait to have something like that." Sue liked her lips clean of salt and looked up through her eyelashes at Ochako. Izuku made a face, wide eyes, pursed lips, and took a very long drink from his lemonade. Shoto only smiled. It wasn't a secret that Sue and Ochako were in love with each other. It was way too obvious. Their first 2 years of high school, the two were just close friends, since Ochako had eyes for Izuku their first year of high school before getting over him their second year and starting a relationship with a student in the B class. Their third year, Ochako fell hard, and Tsu followed closely. Unfortunately, neither of them acted on it. It was quite annoying, really. Maybe you should ask someone on a date. Shoto suggested as happily as he could. Ochako instantly turned bright pink, slapping her hands on her face as she stared at Shoto. Tsu instantly slid down in her seat, crossing her arms as she glared daggers at Shoto. He slapped her thigh underneath the table. I'm sure she would say yes. Ochako's blush deepened and Tsu looked angrier with the situation. I don't think I could. Tsu slapped the table. Go on a date with me, please. Yes. Izuku, Shoto, and Tenya screamed, silencing Ochako's stereotypical W. Izuku was shaking Ochako's shoulder with a bright smile and Shoto and Tenya fisted the air happily. Tsu got extremely jealous of herself and basically destroyed 2 years of pining by demanding her crush go on a date with her. If there was a betting pool on these two, Tenya would make bank. He had been very adamant from day one that Ochako and Tsu would dance around one another for a long time while Izuku and Shoto, Izuku more so, had been hopeful that the two would confess soon and make the cutest couple. Diamond Tenya and him being right 9/10 times. Hanta Orange Heart. How I'm supposed to convince Denki not to sing I'm a Believer at our next gig, but I'm gonna try. Shoto. I am literally at work right now and now I'm trying to check this woman out without laughing in her face because my boyfriend's bandmate is too into memes. Hanta Orange Heart. It's a conversation starter, baby. Shoto. Weird conversation starter. Hanta Orange Heart. Yes, but here we are. Conversating. Shoto. Hanta, I love you, but I am working. I am literally putting money into the register as we are speaking. I am risking my job for you. Hanta Orange Heart. But I will relent. Love you, baby, see you tomorrow. Shoto. Love you too, see you tomorrow. You know you're lucky Tenya isn't working today, because he would definitely call you out in front of the entire store. Izuku poked, smiling as he snatched Shoto's phone and slipped it into his pocket. Mind helping Ochako outside? She's setting up that cherry blossom hydrangea piece. Shoto nodded, leaving the register to a coworker who wasn't doing much. Outside, Ochako was attempting to lift a large baby blue pot holding a large bunch of pink hydrangea and small dots of cherry blossoms. Ochako was far from weak. She could hold Tenya, arguably the tallest and most fit of the bunch, like he was a weightless bride, but she had a bad habit of lifting with her back and while she could hold a lot of weight, she had a hard time holding larger objects because of her smaller hands. The whole thing looked adorable, honestly. Izuku. Said you need some help? Ochako exhaled loudly. Please. Shoto crouched down, urging Ochako to follow the movement, and together the two lifted the large pot onto the nearby wooden shelf. They turned it around so the price tag was showing off and fixed up some of the flowers that were messed up from the movement. Shoto was just about to say something when he noticed Ochako staring with parted lips behind him. What is it? Shoto turned around and instantly regretted it. A tall and muscular man was staring at Shoto and Ochako, opening and closing his mouth. Slowly, after awkwardly looking around, he said, Hey, Todoroki. Inesa, hey. Ochako squeaked, which earned her the attention of the two wide-eyed males. She turned a light shade of pink and stuttered awkwardly. I'm gonna just, yeah. Then she sprinted into the store, the only sound Shoto could register being that of the bell. He chanced to glance through the window, where he saw Ochako jumping over the counter to tackle Izuku to the floor. Shoto shifted his weight, crossing his arms over his chest, and turned to Inesa. He looked a lot different than he did years ago. He had grown out his hair so it was now a decent length, slicked back with hair gel. He was dressed in a white polo shirt and jeans, in his hands were grocery bags. Shoto was suddenly aware of his outfit and it wasn't much different than Inesa's, just a green apron. I thought you stayed in Mizudafu, Shoto mumbled, kicking at the concrete beneath him for some distraction. Inesa nodded. I did for a while, but then I needed a job, so I moved to Tokyo. I didn't know you lived here. I kind of always assumed you would start working for your father's business the second you graduated. No, Shoto shook his head. We're not in contact, my father and I. I'm going to school here, agriculture major. That's surprising. Shoto couldn't help the thought that came to mind. It wouldn't be surprising if you actually listened to me when I talked about my future. Instead, Shoto bit his tongue and said, yeah, I guess. Inesa shifted so he was closer to Shoto and pressed against the shelf of flowers. So, what are you up to these days? Looks like you're still close with your high school friends. I thought I saw Midoriya before Uraraka, tackled him. Yeah, we're all close. We live together, actually. That's, nice. Are Uraraka and Midoriya? No, Shoto turned to face the window, instantly watching Izuku and Ochako spin away to make it look like they weren't intensely watching this conversation. Izuku is single and Ochako finally got together with Tsu. Today, actually. He moved around some pots so they were in rainbow order. Inesa set down his groceries and helped with the process. They always seemed like that couple. Most of your classmates were sure they would get married or something. Shoto shrugged. It was weird to think Izuku and Ochako could ever be together after years of friendship. She had seen him fall up steps, fall into a river, blackout drunk. She wasn't a consideration in Izuku's mind, not anymore, at least. What about Ida? Shinso too? Tenya's as single as ever. Shoto winced when his hand brushed against Inesa, who pretended not to notice the touch, and Hitoshi's been dating someone for a few months, though he told us only a few days ago. Inesa hummed, placing the last yellow pot so the flowers were in a perfect rainbow. Then, he asked the question Shoto had been hoping to avoid, are you seeing anyone? Yeah, I am actually. Shoto hoped he didn't sound as nervous as he was. That's great. What's his name? Shoto hesitated. He knew what this would bring up, and he hated that. Hantashiro. Shoto watched from the corner of his eye as Inesa's awkward expression turned a little dark, depressed, he thought. Oh. Yeah. He's the one. Yeah. Inesa nodded. So, I was right? Shoto gripped the shelf. No, you weren't. Excuse me? I said you were wrong, Shoto glared up at Inesa. I wasn't over him, I never was, but I was. I was willing to try for you. I pushed him aside the second I realized I had feelings for you. I almost forgot him because of you, but then you just ended it because you couldn't accept I was still holding on. It wasn't fair to you to still have feelings for Hanta, but I was getting over them. I was so close, but then you ended it. Inesa reached out but Shoto leaned away. I didn't realize. Well, now you know. You meant a lot to me. Everything we did together, all of those things, they were my firsts. Before you, I had never kissed someone, I'd never been on a date, held hands with someone I'd never. Shoto instinctively touched his hips. I loved you. You never told me that. I was scared that you would break my heart. And I was right. That's not. Shoto swung open the store door, watching briefly as Ochako and Izuku turned to look at him. You didn't talk to me. You jumped to conclusions and assumed you were a toy. That's what isn't fair, Inesa. The door closed softly behind Shoto, and he was quick to accept the hug Ochako jumped for. He buried his face in her hair, body shaking, and unshed tears forming in his eyes. Izuku rubbed his back, holding Shoto's phone out for him to take. You should call him at least, Izuku mumbled. I'll cover for you. Shoto nodded, holding the phone close to him, and walked to the back room. Hanta answered the phone instantly. Can we talk? Shoto whispered. Always. Hanta spent most of the time between school and work either grocery shopping, studying and doing homework, or being the manager of a band. Thursdays were usually kept up by band work, and this Thursday was no exception. Hanta sat in the university's large library, the tallest floor that was usually occupied by sleeping students, potheads trying to get down from their high, and people who needed to get work done without the librarian or snooty business majors, no offense, Ida breathing down their necks. Hanta has been in the position of all three and was currently in the third. He was going through a thin file of complaints, Most of them referred to Kyoka's tendency to perform queer folk songs, so Hanta just tossed those into the nearby trash can when his phone started buzzing on the table. Usually, when working, Hanta would look at the contact, mutter, "I'll look at it later," then deny the call. Shoto was the exception. Can we talk?" Hanta stood from his chair, pushing it in and collecting his stuff into a neat pile. "Always." He shoved his sheet into his bag, slung it over his arm, and quickly walked towards the phone area the library created. The phone area was always suspiciously empty because a lot of people either kept their calls for later or leaned towards texting. The second Hanta sat down, Shoto started crying. I saw him and I talked to him and I thought about him and now I feel terrible and gross and wrong and I'm sorry." Wait, slow down, what? Hanta tapped his foot against the ground and pushed aside the urge to forget both his jobs and sprint to the flower shop just to tackle Shoto in a tight hug. That wasn't possible, unfortunately, because Hanta's boss made it very clear he wasn't allowed to miss a shift without 2 hours warning, as shitty as that rule was. Who? On Shoto's side of the line, there was the sound of a chair scraping against the floor and a body flopping into it. Distantly, Hanta could hear Uraraka saying, "Don't go in, he's really emotional right now and needs some space," followed by Ida saying, "I am not one for violence, but I will, as Hitoshi would say, slap a beach." Both Shoto and Hanta laughed before the bitter energy returned. "Shoto, baby." Hanta leaned against the wall, nibbling his lip aggressively when Shoto let out a sob. "What happened? Who hurt you?" I was helping Ochako W a display outside and when we finished, someone caught her attention, and when I turned Arrow around, I saw Inesa. Inesa? Shoto coughed lightly and Hanta wanted to punch this guy just for making Shoto sound so broken. "My ex, the one I told you about it, in the bathroom. Remember how I said it? It didn't last long." "Yeah. It didn't last long, but I think it would be considered serious." I thought No, I did love him." Hanta leaned forward, resting his elbows deep into his thighs as Shoto's voice grew softer and he started crying harder. "And I thought maybe I would finally forget about you, and I guess I started to, and I was really happy, but he could tell I was holding onto you." Hanta exhaled sharply through his nose. "Shoto, baby, can you please breathe for me?" Shoto did as he was told, and the tenseness in Hanta's muscles eased as the sobs coming through his phone became short, separated exhales or hiccups. "Why are you crying? Is it because he tried to touch you?" No, he didn't, but I feel so guilty." "Because you still liked me?" "No," Shoto whispered, his usual ease returning. "I feel guilty because I should have told you this. I shouldn't have downplayed what happened, and I should have told you I was forgetting about you." Hanta laughed weakly. "Baby, you don't need to feel guilty for that. I assumed you had forgotten about me a bit when you told me about your relationship. I'm not gonna be mad at you for that. I know it's stupid, but doesn't this stuff happen a lot? Lack of communication or jealousy or some shit. Only in BL anime and manga, baby, this is the real world." There was a thump. "You good?" Yeah, I just beat my head against the table because I'm so stupid." Hanta laughed, rubbing his face. "You're not stupid, you were just worried. Will you be okay until tomorrow?" Shoto hummed weakly. "Call me if you need anything, I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible." "I love you." Warmth bloomed in Hanta's chest and his ears started burning. Smiling brightly, Hanta whispered, "I love you too." Then, Shoto hung up the phone, leaving Hanta to stare at the black screen, his reflection looking back at him. Laughing once more, Hanta sighed. "He's awesome." Pinky Minaj. "Is anyone not working today?" Rat King. "I'm working today until 8. Ag Bro. "I'm working until 8 too." Pikachu. "I'm on restock, I won't be home till at least 12. And entertainment night, I'm booked to 2. Kyoka, you're good, right? Girl in purple. "Unless Momo needs me, I'll be fine." Pinky Minaj. "How is your girlfriend?" Girl in purple. "She's good, thanks for asking." "Why did you ask if any of us are working?" Pinky Minaj. "Oh, my Kindle is getting dropped off. Just wanted to make sure someone could pick it up so no one took it. We all remember what happened with our SWC. Pikachu. Didn't we agree that we would never speak of the SWH again? And I'm honestly amazed Mina bought a Kindle. The last book I saw you read wasn't even a book. It was Haikyuu. Fanfiction. Pinky Minaj. In Another Life, is literature. AG bro. You read? Girl in Purple. Yeah, okay, I can pick it up for you. I don't have any plans. Pinky Minaj. Thanks, BB. Rat King. Can you all shut the F up? I can't have my work locker vibrating every 5 seconds. People are gonna jump to conclusions. And do not disturb mode, genius. Rat King. Hanta rolled his eyes and took his own advice. Once he was sure to tell Shoto he would be on do not disturb mode, Hanta tucked his phone into his work locker, fixed his hair in the same way Mina had taught him, and left the locker room into the kitchen. Hakamata was helping a new employee get used to the relative normalcy of the kitchen before he spotted Hanta and quickly joined him. Wonderful haircut, Hanta. Where did you get such a wonderful cut? My best friend Mina, her mother is a stylist, so she's always been good with hair. I can show you a picture of her. She did an awesome job with her hair. It's rose gold these days, but she pulls it off so well she might as well have been born with it. Hakamata laughed. You can show me later. For now, we better get the bar going. Hanta nodded and instantly jogged towards the bar where 2 other of Hanta's coworkers were cleaning off the wood of the bar or cleaning glasses. Hanta was never too close with his coworkers, but they weren't strangers. They were close enough to know one another by last name and occasionally go out for drinks. Hey Kendo. Hey, Minoma. Kendo and Minoma were high school friends, started working at the bar together around the same time as Hanta, but had kept their distance from most people until they started working up front. Hanta wasn't too keen on working with Minoma. He was narcissistic and had no sense of personal space, but Kendo evened it out by being extremely humble and down to earth. What's the special today? Kendo leaned over and picked up the small specials menu. Our entertainment's favorite, tequila sunrise. Hanta turned around to the selection of drinks. Minoma, can you get the Blanco tequila? I'll get the orange juice, oranges, grenadine, and cherries. Minoma scoffed at the question but went scampering when Kendo slapped his neck. You're a miracle, Kendo. The orange-haired woman laughed. I try. How do you deal with him? Nito isn't so bad when you get to know him, at least. He's really hardworking and values his friendships. He just gets really defensive when he thinks someone is underestimating him. Hanta thanked his coworker when they handed him the fruity ingredients he required. How is me asking him for tequila underestimating him? In his twisted mind, you should have gotten the tequila and left him for the majority. Hanta and Kendo shared a laugh at the idea. I saw it as you being nice, but I guess he got offended. I'm sure he annoys you though. Obviously. Don't you ever want to, I don't know, leave him? Kendo shook her head. No. Why? Because we communicate. Hanta smiled softly and chuckled. Communication, we know her. Very well, Kendo cheered. Ejiro and Midoriya pushed the couch against the wall, giving Uraraka and Mina enough room to throw the large, fuzzy blanket over the wooden floor. Kyoka and Tsu dropped the pillows onto the floor, flopping down with sighs. Katsuki quickly stole Ejiro away from Midoriya, putting the 2 of them onto the 2-person couch. Ida moved over to give Midoriya room to join him on the couch. Hanta sat with his back against the couch. Ejiro and Midoriya had moved, Shoto on his lap. Above them, Denki sat on Hitoshi's lap with his legs hanging off the side of the couch. On the large TV, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile was playing. The 2 groups of friends decided to spend their Friday night together in Hanta's apartment to watch some movies. Almost everyone agreed, and it took only a few minutes of convincing to get Katsuki to join. Snacks and blankets were brought over. Denki selected the movies they'd be watching, and everyone got comfortable. Hanta looped his arms around Shoto's waist, pulling him close to his chest. He leaned his head up so his lips brushed against his ear. Are you okay? The 2 hadn't gotten a chance to see one another in person since Thursday morning, and neither of them were too thrilled about it. Hanta was worried about Shoto no matter how many times he assured him he was fine. Shoto hummed quietly, pressing his hands against Hanta's to hold them. I'm a little shaken, but I think that's just because it was really weird seeing him again. Above the two, Midoriya and Ida shared looks. Hitoshi bit hard into his bottom lip and stared dead ahead at the TV. Denki remained oblivious. I promise. Hanta kissed Shoto's ear softly. I trust you, but I'm worried. You shouldn't. I will though. Shoto turned his head and looked down at Hanta. If he wasn't so caught up in their conversation, Shoto would have made a joke about how he was finally taller. They stared at one another for a few seconds before Shoto sighed, leaning down to kiss Hanta softly. I guess I've been thinking about what he said, how it's unfair of me to be mad at him for breaking up with me over you. I'm worried you'll start thinking like him, that you're just a rebound and that I don't actually love you. I'm worried you'll leave me without any conversation. Communication isn't something I take lightly, Hanta whispered, moving his hands up to hold the sides of Shoto's neck. They stayed like that, foreheads and noses pressed against one another and lips brushing with every light breath. I love you so much, Shoto. As bad as it sounds, if I was a rebound, I think I'd still stay. Shoto exhaled sharply, pressing harder against Hanta. Never. Never, never, never. Never in a million years, Hant. You're everything I've ever wanted, literally. All I've ever wanted was. Hanta leaned up, capturing Shoto's lips in a kiss. Shoto quickly threw his arms around Hanta's neck, pulling him closer. Ahem. Hanta and Shoto pulled away, eyes wide and faces burning red. Can you not? Midoriya asked, voice a mix between absolutely defeated and stressed. Sorry, Hanta and Shoto whispered. Ochako kept her hands folded on her stomach, barely paying attention to the movie thanks to the soft fingers playing with her hair. Tsu's body wasn't the warmest, they needed a blanket to keep from shivering, but she was soft and welcoming. Her posture simply begged for Ochako to stay, and she did. This is better than I could have ever imagined, Ochako whispered, shimmying up so her face was now pressed against Tsu's neck. Her lips brushed against skin and Tsu shivered barely. I used to watch you back in high school, waiting for the day I could finally tell you I love you. Tsu's hands stopped playing with her hair. One moved down her body, wrapping itself around her waist to hold her close while the other tucked under her head as a second pillow. Why didn't you? She asked. I was scared, Ochako admitted without any hesitance. That I would reject you. I was afraid of that too. Ochako hummed, lightly kissing Tsu's neck before opening her eyes to stare at the TV. We're kinda stupid, aren't we? Pining for 2 years but not doing anything out of fear of rejection, only for it to be mutual. Pretty stupid. Pretty stupid, Tsu echoed. Are we done being pretty stupid? Tsu rubbed circles on Ochako's waist. Yes. Denki had his arms around Hitoshi's neck, but he didn't pull him down. It was like wearing a necklace, Hitoshi noted. His body was always too warm to handle in the bed. They could never cuddle unless the blankets were completely off, but then Hitoshi would get too cold without Denki latching onto him like a koala. When the two met, Hitoshi undoubtedly thought Denki was attractive. He was stupid, yes, and had some of the worst pickup lines known to man, but his smile was infectious and his laugh was as cute as his stupid face. Agreeing to a date had been one of the best decisions he'd ever made. Sometimes Hitoshi wondered what Denki saw in him, but those thoughts were dispelled when Denki would cuddle up to him, whispering either great praise or some random thought he had in the middle of holding one another. Or when Denki would shove him into the passenger's seat of his car before taking off down the road to a mystery date that always ended with falling asleep on the hood of the car. Or moments like these, where Denki is casually sprawled out on his lap, holding him close but not making a show of it. He loved those moments. He loved Denki. Hitoshi leaned forward, biting Denki's ear lightly to gain the undivided attention of his boyfriend. I love you, he whispered before leaning back into his original position. Denki's legs kicked forward, thankfully out of the way of anyone, and he looked over his shoulder to smile happily at Hitoshi. I love you too, Denki whispered, pressing his face into the crook of Hitoshi's neck. They weren't verbal people, but every word counted. They're disgusting. You're using me as your personal throne. Katsuki shrugged. He was completely pressed into Ejiro's undoubtedly more muscular body. He could care less about the movie, he'd seen it many times before, so his entire mind was occupied by Ejiro. Ejiro, who held his hip carefully, who placed one large hand on Katsuki's thigh and swiped across it at a slow pace, who every now and then would lean down to kiss the top of his head. We've been together longer, it's justified. Your logic is terrible. Ejiro sighed, but it held no malice. Katsuki grumbled. We've been together longest, therefore we are expected to be all lovey-dovey. They don't. Ejiro laughed lowly. He leaned down a bit, shifting the position so Katsuki could listen to his heartbeat. He was thrown back to his first year of high school when he and Ejiro had just started dating and would cuddle awkwardly in their rooms. They always cuddled like this, and Katsuki would listen to Ejiro's rapid heartbeat. Over the years, though, it slowed until every time they held one another close, Ejiro's heartbeat was a simple beat. But we're dating just like them. Then let's get married. Ejiro tensed, freezing. His body felt like a board against Katsuki. Katsuki's heart clenched at the reaction. He hadn't planned to do it like this, whispering as quietly as he could while their friends sat around, but then again, Katsuki hadn't even purchased a ring. Katsuki closed his eyes, listening to Ejiro's heartbeat. Just like when he was a nervous 15-year-old, it was beating aggressively. Ejiro held his waist now, carefully, and he pressed against Katsuki's ear. Do you really mean that? Obviously. There was a long pause, and Katsuki worried Ejiro would throw him off of him and leave him cold and alone for the rest of the night. That did not happen. Ejiro kissed Katsuki's temple softly, hugging him from behind. Let's do it. Katsuki smiled. No, he FNG beamed. I'll order a ring tomorrow. Tenya breathed heavily, glasses slipping from his nose due to the heavy sheet over sweat covering his body head to toe. He moved his hand from the mattress below to the headboard, earning an approving groan from the man beneath him. Tenya grunted loudly as he quickened his pace, using his other hand to hold tightly onto the sheets. The pastel gray sheets were twisted in his hands before they snapped off in the corner. Tenya. With one final movement, Tenya came undone, breathing and breathing heavily. The weight of his body came crashing down on him, and if it hadn't been from his deadlock grip on the headboard, he probably would have fallen. He pulled his glasses off, blindly setting them down on the bedside table. The room was hot, the air thick with the smell of SEC and the noise of low breathing. Rolling over, Tenya stared up at the blurry ceiling. A few seconds later, a skinny arm wrapped itself around his large chest and soft hair tickled his armpit. Tenya laughed lightly, pushing the hair back. Was that good? Yuga scoffed, flipping over so he now lied on Tenya's chest, arms cushioning his chin. He stared at Tenya with a flabbergasted smile. His face was flushed red, his usually perfect hair sticking against his forehead, and Tenya could faintly make out the dark purple hickeys running along his body. You always ask that, Yuga said, French accent shaky as he attempted to regain his breath, and the answer is always the same, I've never had better. Tenya ran his large hands along the certainly smaller body atop him. Yuga was like a doll compared to Tenya, perfect fair skin with a tiny waist. He wasn't scrawny, but he lacked the muscle Tenya had. He was delicate, compact, small while Tenya was buff, broad, big. The difference in bodies had made Tenya worried the first couple of times, but he eventually discovered it only made things better. Yuga made sure he knew that. It was strange, keeping these kinds of things from his friends, but it seemed to be a pattern in his group. Then again, Shoto and Tsu seemed to be well aware of what he was up to, and Izuku and Ochako seemed to be catching up while Hitoshi couldn't care less, though Tenya theorized that he was completely in the light. He wasn't ashamed of Yuga, no that wasn't it. Ochako and Izuku were good friends of Yuga's while Tsu and Hitoshi occasionally praised his skincare routine and his amazing grade in English. What held him back from saying it was that it was so unlike him. Tenya loved labels, he loved knowing what was going on, but with Yuga, they had no label, no idea what they were doing. It had started off as innocent. Yuga was constantly whining about being single, so Tenya, tired of the complaining, offered to be something of a stand-in. They went on dates, held hands every now and then, kissed in privacy, and had section. A lot actually. Yuga was a physical lover. He loved showing his appreciation through hugs, kisses, and section. Tenya, willing to help Yuga, reciprocated, though he was not ashamed to admit he enjoyed it. However, despite acting like a couple, experiencing things all couples did, they never called one another their partner. Tenya was bad with emotions. He knew that better than anyone, and Yuga made no effort to talk about the lingering question. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and Tenya was addicted to it. Yuga slicked Tenya's hair back, smiling affectionately, or Tenya assumed it was affectionate. He couldn't see. Yuga slowly crawled up so he was in reach of Tenya's face and started kissing his neck tenderly. Tenya let his head fall to the side, giving Yuga more of a reach. "You should invest in contacts," Yuga whispered. "You look nice without them." Tenya hummed. "I'll consider it." "Consider slicking your hair back too." "All right." A small pause filled the room, the only sound being the now steady breath of the two and the sounds of Yuga kissing Tenya's neck like it was his own mouth. Tenya sighed. "Come here." Yuga perked up, instantly capturing Tenya's lips in a hot kiss. Tenya held his face carefully while Yuga wasted no time to mess up Tenya's hair, making small noises against his lips. A dangerous game, Tenya thought as Yuga trailed his lips down Tenya's body. "I want to keep playing." Izuku would probably be considered a himbo if he wasn't so tactful. In middle school, Izuku was definitely a beta male. He was scrawny, weak, pathetic, and cowardly. He hid behind his notebooks, letting people kick him around like a rag doll. However, at the end of his middle school career, he met Toshinori Yagi, a man once recognized as a decorated veteran who was now a scrawny, weak man with an unfortunate habit of coughing out blood. Toshinori quickly took Izuku under his wing and taught him many things: a healthy diet, a workout routine, how to stand up for himself, and how to fight. By his first year of high school, Izuku was unrecognizable to his middle school classmates. As the years went by, Izuku only grew. His muscles became defined, and in his third year of high school, he finally hit his growth spurt and grew from 5 feet 5 inches to a whopping 6 foot. His face remained round, but if he turned his head correctly, his jawline would be shown off. TLDR, he became the spinning image of a himbo. But he was smart. Izuku was not the top of his class. Tenya typically took the cake with that, but he was usually number 3 or 2. It kind of depended on what mood Shoto was in when exams rolled around. He was great with history, accelerated at English, and was good enough at science and math. On top of that, he was far from innocent. In middle school, Izuku was definitely sheltered from certain things, but the second he became friends with Hitoshi and Tsu, he was exposed to the wonderful world of swear words, horror films, and less than appropriate things. By the time college rolled around, Izuku had his own HRM of sorts, though he never took advantage of it due to fear of breaking too many hearts. Hitoshi called him weak while Tsu simply commented on how she would love to have countless girls fighting for her attention, though she did change her tune when her feelings for Ochako developed. Izuku had a good handful of relationships, but he remained single in his first year of college and planned to keep the streak in his second year. Then he had a meeting with a hyper-woman with a pastel wardrobe. Toru Hagakure was an art major, studying to be part of animation, specifically claymation. She and Izuku met when Izuku rolled around to the art department to find Yuga. While searching for his friend, Izuku found a table full of clay dolls of the same character doing poses that were slightly different. As he was admiring the work, someone suddenly came up behind him. Izuku had jumped and nearly resorted to his natural fight instinct. Thankfully, that urge died when he saw the face of whoever startled him. In all standards, she was horribly plain. She had long, straight hair in a low-hanging ponytail, brown eyes, and slightly rectangular glasses. She was wearing a white t-shirt and overalls, which were covered in slightly dark white stains. She had skin-tight gloves on and was holding a small stick. Her most defining feature was her strawberry blonde hair and her bright, toothy smile. Toru and Izuku became acquainted fast. Every time he came looking for Yuga, he'd make a small detour to check on Toru's progress and catch up with her. Small meetings in the art room turned to greeting one another when they passed one another. Greeting one another turned into hanging out between classes to talk about everything and nothing. Talking about everything and nothing between classes then turned into weekly coffee. One might consider them a couple, but one thing stopped Izuku from agreeing. He wasn't 100% sure Toru thought the same thing. Yes, she was extremely nice to Izuku and they went out almost every week, but Izuku always had that pestering thought that she saw it as two friends hanging out rather than a date. He would always stare at her waving hands and wonder what would happen if he intertwined their fingers, but he always backed out of it. He wanted to though. God knows he wanted to. What are you thinking about, Mr. Midoriya? Izuku snapped his head up from his palm. He looked up at the woman standing at his side. She was smiling brightly as always, skin glowing underneath the dim cafe lights. In her hands were two pastel mugs that steamed with coffee. Smiling with an all-too-familiar warmth in his face, Izuku took his cup from Toru. Nothing important, Ms. Hagakure. Tenya stared at his unfamiliar reflection, running his fingers on the usually trapped skin underneath his eyes. It was often Tenya didn't wear his glasses, only when he was in the water or sleeping or the rare occasion he decided to take them off for a chore that guaranteed him to get dirty. He didn't like his eyes. They were a shiny red that his glasses' thick frames toned down to a dark red. He hated slicking his hair back as well. The hair gel stuck to his hands and left a weird tingling feeling. Yet, here he stood, dressed in a nice navy blue suit without his glasses, and his hair slicked back, all because Yuga asked him. Contempt with his appearance, Tenya exited the bathroom into the living room. Hitoshi spared him a glance and turned bright red. Izuku and Ochako blinked from the kitchen table while Tsu shamelessly wolf-whistled. Date? She asked with a smirk on her lips. Just a dinner with my brother, Tenya lied. He tucked his phone into the inner pocket of his coat, then slid his wallet into his front pocket, keeping that hand tucked into the pocket on the off chance a mugger came running at him. I'll be late, maybe even stay with him for the night. No one stay awake for me. The apartment nodded, waving Tenya off as he left the apartment. 15 minutes later, Yuga was entering Tenya's clean car with a smile on his face. He was wearing the gray suit Tenya bought him with a lavender tie. His blonde hair was straightened, held in a low-hanging ponytail. The two greeted one another with a kiss, and when they parted, Yuga rubbed beneath Tenya's eyes. You listen to me, he said happily. Your eyes look wonderful, Tenya, and your hair looks nice. Thank you, though I fail to understand what a lack of glasses and slicked-back hair adds to my appearance. Yuga sighed, kissing beneath Tenya's eyes before he could start driving. It's because I get to see more of your face, obviously. Tenya turned a bright red. Oh, I see. Yuga smiled brightly, humming to himself before folding his hands into his lap and turning forward. Tenya kept his hands stiff on the steering wheel, mind racing with possible conversation starters he could use. Talking to Yuga wasn't usually hard. The two have had plenty of conversations that lasted for hours, but in situations like these, where Yuga has left Tenya speechless or overwhelmed with emotion, it was hard to even open his mouth. The city looks nice today, Yuga said softly, staring out the window. You always take me out when it looks the best, have you noticed that? Every time we go for a meal or for a walk, the lights are at their brightest, the sky is filled with reds and pinks and purples. I feel like I'm in a different place. Have you noticed that, Tenya? Tenya nodded. Yes, I have. It's always been intentional. I noticed that whenever we have our dates at night, and in the city, you're happier. I like it when you're happy. It was a leap in their usual vocabulary. They rarely threw around the word date. They typically chose outing or meeting rather than date. Along with that, Tenya wasn't usually so open with his emotions. Out of the corner of his eye, Tenya spotted Yuga's face through the reflection of the window. He was smiling to himself, face dusted pink, eyes twinkling in the light. I see, he said softly. That's very nice of you, Tenya. No one has ever done such kind things for me. I deeply appreciate you, Tenya. His heart was beating against his chest, like a prisoner falsely accused beating on the bars, begging to be let go. Tenya swallowed thickly, refusing to let himself look at Yuga lest he wanted to crash the car. That's nice to hear, Yuga. I appreciate you as well. They were the wrong words. They were such wrong words that it physically hurt Tenya. He had to force them out of his mouth. Tenya, Yuga looked away from the window, so he was now staring ahead at the busy road. What are we doing? What do you mean? I mean, what are we doing to ourselves? Are we torturing ourselves? Are we teasing ourselves? Are we pleasing ourselves? Are we using one another to please ourselves? Yuga shifted, so he was now sitting up straight, running his fingers through his loose hair. What are you using me for? Tenya flicked his blinker. I am not using you for anything, Yuga. Then are you amusing me? Or am I using you? Wouldn't you be the one to know if you were using me? Tenya asked, Adam's apple bobbing. We started this because you were in need of a partner's love, and I was willing to fill that void for you. I don't think either of us knew what we were doing. I think what we should be asking is, what are we doing now? Yuga rubbed his knees. What do you want from me? What I want is for us to continue this, whatever it is, but I don't want to continue to ignore the labels. You know me better than you think, Yuga, and you know that I personally enjoy labels. I like to know what is happening, what things are. What does that mean? What it means, Tenya said, pulling the car into a random parking lot. He put the car in park, unbuckling himself so he could turn to Yuga easier. What it means is that I will not continue this unless you are willing to properly be my lover. Yuga blinked. His body was completely frozen, his face stuck into one of shock. Tenya worried he would turn, then demand Tenya take him home, drop all contact with him. Instead, Yuga smiled. He cupped Tenya's face, leaning in so close that their lips brushed with every breath. That's all. Tenya pulled the hair tie, watching Yuga's hair fall free. He wrapped it around his hand, enjoying the constant softness of it all. His other hand held Yuga's face, rubbing it fondly with his thumb. He sat like that, enjoying Yuga's constant breathing and the small brush against his lips. Finally, he whispered, That's all. That's all I've ever wanted, Tenya. Then Yuga leaned forward to kiss Tenya softly. Tenya's hand released Yuga's hair, dropping to hold the bottom of his back lightly. The kiss was constant, soft, and the only sound in the care. Yuga breathed through his nose, pulling away from Tenya. He chased his lips and opened his eyes when he missed. I love you, Tenya. I love you too, Yuga. Tenya, your suspicions about my relationship with Yuga are correct. You. Excuse me? I was right? What is that? 3/3? Tenya, I'll be staying at his. My phone will be off from now to tomorrow. Please do not worry about me. Izuku. Get that D-dash, Tenya. Izuku blinked the sleep from his eyes, yawning for the nth time that morning. He didn't typically like Starbucks and he would usually choose to go to the lesser-known places, but he also knew Toru had an assessment today and that a good venti hibiscus lemonade was her favorite thing from Starbucks, and Izuku is a simp for one Toru Hagakure. The line wasn't too long, so Izuku was in and out of the store in about 10 minutes. The campus Starbucks was usually busy, but Izuku had the tactic of showing up pretty much the second the place opened. The one problem was that Starbucks was on the other side of the campus, far away from the art building. Not quite the preferable circumstances, that's for sure. Izuku wasn't the fastest runner. He knew Ito would forever take the cake on that one, but he wasn't exactly slow. In high school, when he wasn't studying or spending time with his friends, Izuku would partake in parkour, just for fun. That resulted in him learning a bunch of flips, how to jump from one place to the other no matter the size, and how to run like the cops were on your tail. The college campus was filled to the brim with benches and tables and odd decorations to sit on, which meant even better things for Izuku to jump on to keep pace. As he jumped from one table to the next, he held the large cup of lemonade by the lid, mumbling prayers to himself that he wouldn't trip. Hey, Yuga! Izuku yelled, jumping over the lap of his blonde friend. Finally get with Tenya? He asked, pausing for a few seconds to catch the amused, yes, from Yuga. Awesome! Then he was off, sprinting down the long stretch of concrete that led from the main building to the large art building. The entrance of the building was a little crowded with people talking to their friends before classes began, and Izuku was about to make a dead sprint inside when he was stopped. A girl he's never seen before grabbed his arm, laughing at how startled he looked. Izuku bounced on his heels and stared at the clock behind the girl. You're Izuku Midoriya, Toru's boyfriend, right? A bright blush shot across Izuku's face, but he didn't stop bouncing. Be boyfriend? He yelled, lips turning into a bright smile. Yeah, she talks about you all the time. You're such a sweet guy, you know that, right? Toru used to be the last choice of every guy she's ever met. When you met her, she was probably the least confident I've ever seen her. You're an awesome dude, Midoriya. The girl's eyes dropped to the lemonade in Izuku's hands. Oh, her favorite. Nice seeing you, Midoriya. Izuku nodded excitedly, racing inside the art building. He had been in this building more times than he could count, whether he was there for Yuga or Toru or another friend who hung around in the building. He turned his sprinting into a jogboarding run down the hallway towards the stairwell down into the workroom, specifically for claymation or other larger projects. The workroom was always loud, filled with people yelling for the materials they needed or running around to look for it themselves. There were people standing still for their friends, others holding questionable objects because you can never forget the abstract artists, and there were a few people chilling on boxes or the floor, talking animatedly with friends who were working on sketches or the final details of projects. Izuku stumbled around, nodding his head to anyone he recognized. He smiled at the familiar table filled with clay models. They were all standing in a straight line, concealed in a glass box to keep anyone from touching them. After admiring them for a minute, Izuku stood up straight, spotting the tech room. The tech room was one of the smaller rooms of the workroom, where people working with claymation or animation would go to work on the video part of their projects. Sitting in one of the small computer desks was a familiar woman with strawberry blonde hair. Working hard? Izuku asked, pressing the cold cup to Toru's cheek. She squeaked a bit, swatting Izuku's hand away with a laugh. She smiled up at him and accepted the cup. My favorite. I know. Izuku laughed, looking at the screen. This looks amazing, Toru. Thank you. I was a little worried since it's just a few seconds too short, but I think the detail and smooth moving will make up for it. As Toru started to ramble about her project, dragging the mouse to show Izuku small details, he couldn't help but think back to what that girl said out front, that Toru talked about him all the time, how she had become confident again because of him, that she used to be the last choice. It made him so happy. She called him her boyfriend. And also, Toru turned her head, words dying, and face turning red. Izuku stared at her, smiling softly. They were a hair apart, their noses brushing against each other. So, I ran into one of your friends outside, Izuku whispered, grabbing the lemonade and setting it on the ground carefully. When were you gonna tell me I'm your boyfriend? Laughing a bit, Toru mumbled, I thought you already knew. That was enough to make Izuku lurched forward, cupping Toru's face in her hands as their lips met. She was quick to grab onto the fabric of his hoodie, pulling him even closer. She tasted like strawberries, Izuku noted a few seconds into their lips meeting. The kiss wasn't anything too romantic, not one you'd see in movies that last for a suspiciously long time, but it was a kiss Izuku had been holding out for. Pulling apart, Izuku watched Toru bite her bottom lip before laughing weakly. Thanks for the lemonade. Emchum. She pecked his lips. And for the kiss. Whenever you want them. Toru quirked a brow. Then she slipped her hands behind Izuku's neck and pulled him down. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered against his lips. If it's any consolation, my aunt broke a vase her wedding day, Hanta huffed, bending down to pick up the shattered hand mirror. Shoto glanced up at his boyfriend before returning his attention to Tuya. The Todoroki family plus Hanta stood in a large, circular room. Fuyumi sat on the arm of a couch, dressed in a light pink dress, and was sharing concerned looks with Natsuo, who wore a black suit. Tuya was pacing around the room, dressed in white, ranting about random things as he waved his arms. Hanta walked towards the trash can, tossed the glass pieces away, then turned to the siblings. Trust me, he needs this. What are you? F dash. Tuya yelled, falling to the ground from the sudden slap across the face. What the F dash? Hanta crouched down, grabbing Tuya's shoulder. Dude, you need to calm the F down. If Shimura didn't want to marry you, he wouldn't have invested 6 months into a crazy but expensive wedding, driven us all out here, bought a suit, and would be sitting a few rooms away probably fearing that his insane fiancée is breaking sheet. Everyone spared a small glance at the small trash can that now harbored the destroyed mirror. Buddy, get your sheet together. Tuya blinked a few times, then nodded and shot up. Yeah. Who am I kidding? Of course, Tenko wants to marry me. Yeah. Alright, let's do this. The remaining Todoroki siblings turned to Tuya with impressed looks. I was also the one to make sure my aunt didn't leave on her wedding day. Shoto slipped under Hanta's arm, standing on his toes to kiss his cheek. Hanta smiled before turning to kiss Shoto on the lips properly. If Katsuki and Ejiro are anything like this at their weddings, I'm gonna be running back and forth rooms to make sure they don't run off. Shoto hummed against Hanta's lips. An alarm on Fuyumi's phone went off and the room went silent. I should get going. Hanta rubbed Shoto's bottom lip before walking towards the door. See you guys in like 2 minutes. All things considered, the wedding wasn't that big. A few rows of white chairs set out for an odd bunch of friends and family to sit in, a light pink carpet leading down the aisle, a seemingly large circular room with cream white walls with golden flakes and various windows. Hanta was lucky enough to be sitting in the front with Takami and Usajiyama, who smiled at Hanta the second he sat down. The three looked forward, waiting in peaceful silence before the music started. Everyone quickly stood, watching over their shoulders or turning their bodies to watch Natsuo come down the aisle with Shimura's unofficial older sister, Magna. Shoto came next with Shimura's self-appointed brother Jin, then it was Fuyumi and Himiko, Shimura's best friend after Tuya. Tuya was hooking arms with his mother, Rei, who smiled with tears already rolling down her face. Their pace was a little slow, but they reached the end of the aisle just in time to see Shimura coming down with Kurogiri. The two were smiling at one another before looking ahead. Tuya instantly inhaled sharply, swiping his thumb under her eye. The Todoroki siblings moved to sit down, one by one, until the only one standing at the aisle was Tuya and Shimura. Shoto rested his head on Hanta's shoulder, slipping his small hand into Hanta's larger one. Hanta gave it an affectionate squeeze and looked at him in the corner of his eye. His eyes should have been focused on the happy couple, the ones who were standing in front of a small crowd and declaring their undying love for one another despite how much they hated one another when they were younger. His mind should have been blank and he should have been focused on how badly Tuya was trying not to cry. But alas, Hanta was focused on the way Shoto's hair fell out of place ever so subtly. He was focused on the way Shoto's lips twitched from smiling too much, how his breathing was a little uneven despite all the bad things that could go wrong not happening. Hanta leaned down so Shoto could hear him. I love you so much. Shoto shifted, turning his head so his forehead was pressed against Hanta's lips. He brought his free hand up, stroking Shoto's hair with a small smile. You're everything to me, you know? Lightly, Shoto kicked his ankle. Hanta kissed his forehead. Me too, Shoto whispered. They look happy, Hanta sighed, watching Tuya stumble over his feet. Shimura held his back tightly, leading the two as the music played in the background. Their first dance had been flawless, but it seemed that Tuya had only learned how to dance to that one song. Other couples were dancing around the two, laughing at one another or the things being said. Shoto nodded, accepting the small glass of whiskey Hanta brought him. I imagine after this, they'll be out of the city, living together. Tenko mentioned something about relocating the bar. Yeah, Shoto said, sounding just the tiniest bit disappointed. Hanta finished his drink fairly quickly. Liquid courage, he thought to himself. Shoto sipped at his drink but eventually sat it down. He stood to his feet, making grabby hands at Hanta, who laughed. He set down the empty drink, letting Shoto pull him to his feet and then onto the dance floor. They crashed into one another but found a rhythm very quickly. Hanta was always a dancer, and Shoto had learned for the wedding. More than Tuya, it appeared. Tenya is at Yuga's again, Shoto said, guiding Hanta away from Natsuo and Takami. Tsu and Ochako are celebrating some anniversary they made up. Hitoshi is with, well, you already know, and Izuku is out with Toru. Wanna stay over after this? Or, do the others need you? Hanta sighed heavily at Shoto's question. What? Is something wrong? Hanta spun Shoto away from Fuyumi and Usajiyama. No, it's just, wouldn't everything be easier than making sure our roommates aren't home, debating who will go to whose apartment we'll go to, wondering if one of us has enough food. It'd all be easier if we just lived in the same apartment. Shoto pulled Hanta close, resting his elevated chin on his chest with a hopeful look. What do you think? If you're asking to move in with me, Shoto said, standing on his toes, then I say pack your sheet up, 'cause I'll buy the place. Hanta laughed, leaning down to kiss Shoto softly. When they pulled apart, Hanta couldn't help but quip, too bad we won't have annoying neighbors. I was hoping we'd get to watch 'em eat cute. I can't believe I fell in love with you. Yes, Hanta dipped Shoto dramatically, pecking his lips quickly, but you're the one who knocked on my apartment door, so whose fault is that? Shoto curled his fingers in Hanta's hair, happily letting him pull him up to stand straight. All mine. He rubbed circles along the nape of Hanta's neck, smiling as he stared into fond eyes. All mine, Hanta.